Chapter 344. These three core formation cultivators were all disciples of the 12 great houses. They had cultivated for less than 100 years and relied on the power of their clans to barely achieve the lower 3 grades of core formation. However, they knew in their hearts that they had no hope of achieving Tao and would have to reincarnate sooner or later. However, in the big clans, reincarnation was also particular. If they found a poor family to reincarnate, and if they were born with good aptitude, then it was fine. The elders of the clan would take them to cultivate. However, if they didn't have spirituality, then they would have to live a poor life in the mortal world. Not only would they have to work hard for others, but no one would care about their life and death. Just like that, they were extremely unwilling. They always wanted to live a life of luxury. Even if they couldn't cultivate in their next life, they would be able to live a carefree and rich life. However, if they wanted to live in a rich family, they would have to make great contributions to the clan. It would take who knows how many years to kill demons, and they might not be able to defeat their own clans. If they could break through the gate, it would be a great opportunity. Thus, they were the first to bravely take the lead. Just now, they entered the formation gate. However, they saw a figure stepping on the void, tearing through the air and rushing over. The light and shadows in the formation were chaotic, and it was hard to see. They didn't know who it was, so they were secretly on guard. When the person came in front of them, the three could see clearly. This person was more than 3 meters tall, more than twice the size of a normal person. He wore a crown and armor, and held a long rod in his hand. He was dressed differently from a normal cultivator. They had all seen this person in the competition before, so they immediately exclaimed, "Sui Hong." The three instantly panicked. They originally just wanted to take advantage of the situation and didn't have much fighting spirit. Now that they saw this disciple of the Su clan coming over with a murderous aura, they were afraid and didn't dare to fight. They turned their heads and wanted to retreat. Sui Hong just realized that the formation couldn't operate as it wished. He immediately guessed the opponent's goal and rushed towards the Qian position's life gate. Now that he saw that the person trying to enter the formation saw him and ran away without fighting, his gaze turned fierce. He said, "Where do you think you're going?" He roared like a tiger, shaking all 4 directions. It was unknown what technique he used, but he actually appeared behind them in a single step. He swung the black dragon cloud-scraping staff in his hand and swept it horizontally. Just now, when the staff fell, it made a whistling sound. A disciple who had left a little later could not avoid it in time and hurriedly turned around. He took out a bowl-shaped magic treasure. The mouth of the bowl was facing outwards, and it emitted a bright blue light to protect his front. Who would have thought that the cloud-scraping rod would treat this magic treasure as nothing? With a "pa" sound, it shattered the magic treasure into pieces. Its power didn't stop there as it struck the disciple's chest. The powerful force immediately split the disciple into 2 pieces. The 2 disciples at the front were shocked and took advantage of Sui Hong's slight delay. He leaped out of the flag gate and fled towards the outer formation. Just now, the people outside the array saw that the 3 of them had just entered. Only 2 people ran out, and their expressions were filled with panic. Just as they were puzzled, they saw a figure rush out from the gate. The figure was extremely fast, and with just a few steps, he arrived behind one of them and snatched the stick out of his hand. This strike was as fast as lightning, instantly piercing through the right side of the disciple's chest. With another twist, he exploded into flesh and blood. At this moment, the last disciple had already run hundreds of feet away, thinking that he was out of danger. Sui Hong's gaze focused, and his throat bulged as he roared at the person behind him. With a rumbling sound, it was as if there was a huge drum being beaten in the air. The disciple instantly felt like he was struck by lightning, stumbling a few steps. Sui Hong let out a sharp roar and charged over. He leaped up and with a "kacha" sound, he smashed the head of the disciple. The violent force didn't stop there, and the corpse was smashed into a ball of mush. Before the soul could escape, it dissipated. After killing the three of them, he held his staff horizontally in front of the array gate, coldly facing the thousands of Qinsang school disciples. Qi Yuntian couldn't help but praise, "I heard that Sui Hong was born with spiritual roots, and since he was in his mother's womb, he was watered with jade liquid and nourished with golden medicine." Su Wentian said that he wasn't as good as this person, and that he would most likely lose. Today, it seems like it wasn't a lie. The white-haired Taoist beside him also nodded and said, "This person is hard to take down, we need capable disciples to surround and attack him." At this moment, a young cultivator dressed in luxurious clothing walked out from below the stage. His face was pink, and a sword hung on his waist, looking extraordinary. He came up and cupped his hands, saying angrily, "Eldest senior brother, this person killed my junior brother, please allow me to take revenge." Qi Yuntian looked down and nodded, "So it's junior brother Wu. Sui Hong's cultivation is extraordinary, but junior brother's journey is too dangerous. Why don't you choose someone else to go with junior brother?" Seeing Qi Yuntian's words, junior martial brother Wu couldn't help but feel happy. He was about to bring a few of his close friends with him, but just as he was about to agree, another 4 or 5 people stood up and said, "Senior martial brother is right, we are willing to help junior martial brother Wu." Junior brother Wu's expression immediately turned ugly. These people were from different families, they were obviously here to steal the credit from him. However, he could tell that these people were related to the 3 dead cultivators by marriage. They were all very bold and confident, so he had no way to kick them away. He cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Qi Yuntian smiled, looked around, and said, "Good, whoever takes down that Sui Hong, I will ask the sect master and the other enlightened beings for his merit and recommend him to take the position of one of the top 10 disciples." These people were overjoyed when they heard this. This wasn't a competition between the sects, so there was no need to follow any rules. As for who would be able to kill Sui Hong, it would depend on the luck of each family. Although junior martial brother Wu was unwilling, he had no choice but to follow these people. 6 clouds of smoke soared in the sky, aggressively charging towards Sui Hong. After they flew into the air, more than 100 streaks of light followed. They were the disciples of the mystic light realm of the various races. Although they couldn't fight against Sui Hong, they could help him with their treasures to increase their numbers. There were also some disciples of the master and disciple branch who wanted to go up and attack together, but Qi Yuntian didn't give a decree, so they didn't dare to move. After this group of people went far away, the white-haired Daoran asked in a low voice, "First senior brother, why did you let them go?" Qi Yuntian smiled and said, "Although Sui Hong rarely shows himself in the sect, he was favored by the 4 enlightened beings and was promoted to be one of the top 10 disciples. How can he be taken down so easily? I'll let them suffer a bit so that they won't say that I'm unfair and biased towards the disciples of the master and disciple branch." The white-haired Daoran nodded and didn't say anything else. The 6 disciples quickly arrived in front of the array. They knew that Sui Hong was a cultivator of the strength path, so they didn't dare to get too close. When they were 30 feet away, they stopped moving forward and shouted in unison. They threw the treasures in their hands into the air. The 100 or so disciples behind them didn't want to be left out and also released the treasures in their hands. All kinds of treasures flashed and gathered towards Sui Hong. Sui Hong let out a wild laugh as he faced over 100 magical treasures. His body trembled, and his joints shook. On top of the golden crown, there was a scarlet jewel that shone brightly. In a split second, it emitted a white mist that looked like a cloud. It was hundreds of feet wide and looked like an umbrella covering the top of his head. It was unknown what it was, but it was as if many magical treasures were attacking him. However, they were all caught by the white mist. It only buzzed there, unable to move. Qi Yuntian's expression changed slightly. Most of the people here didn't recognize this treasure, but he did. It was called the Escape Pearl, one of the 7 pearls on enlightened being Su Mo's robe. 100 years ago, there was a huge change in the sect. This enlightened being Dong Tian died in the hands of that fierce person, and this enlightened being's treasure was also broken because the 7 pearls had already gained spirituality. After that, they went their separate ways and no one knew where they went. He didn't think that he would see it again today. It must have been found by Lady Su, but she couldn't find all of them. Otherwise, there wouldn't be only one embedded in Sui Hong's crown. This treasure couldn't hurt or stop the enemy, but it could release a mist cloud that protected the body. If it wasn't a Xian artifact, it would be impossible to get close. The 6 of them saw that their magic treasures seemed to be stuck to the cloud, unable to descend and unable to retract them. They hurriedly used their Dharma techniques, but no matter how they tried, there was no movement. All of their faces turned red, unable to advance or retreat. Sui Hong laughed wildly. The golden armor on his body rang and he walked in front of one of them with one step. The cloud contact rod created a light shadow and smashed the head of the person, causing it to fall to the ground. With a turn of his body, he appeared in front of another person in the blink of an eye. His rod swept towards the waist. That person turned pale with fright when he saw his peer's fate. He hastily tried to dodge, but it was already too late. He heard the sound of the wind, and with a pu sound, he was struck in the waist. In the blink of an eye, he was beaten into a ball of rotten meat. The remaining 4 people were frightened out of their wits. How could they still care about retrieving their magic treasures? They quickly withdrew from the scene. The white-haired Daoran exclaimed, "Earth-shrinking technique? Cultivators of the Qi path don't even bother to learn this spell. I didn't think that this person could use it so well. Combined with his strength path Xian art, it will be hard to break." Qi Yuntian thought for a while and said, "I think this person has more than one spell. Junior brother, watch carefully." At this moment, Sui Hong suddenly shouted. His voice was like rumbling thunder. Among the 1,000 disciples present, those with slightly weaker cultivations felt their ears rumble, and their minds became dizzy. The people in front of the flag gate were even worse. More than 100 Xian Light Realm disciples seemed to have been hit by a hammer. They all fell down like rain. The remaining 4 core transformation realm cultivators seemed to be drunk and their footsteps became erratic. Sui Hong let out a roar and chased after them. He swung his staff at each of them as if he was killing dogs. In the blink of an eye, 3 of their heads had been exploded by him. However, Junior Brother Wu's cultivation base was extraordinary, and he was a bit further away. When he saw what was happening, he was scared out of his wits. He didn't dare to stay for even a moment longer, and was just about to fly away when Sui Hong suddenly sucked in a breath. A whistling sound could be heard, and a gust of wind sprang up, shaking him so violently that he looked like he was about to fall off the clouds. Sui Hong let out a heh sound and swung his staff. With a pa sound, Wu Shidi's head exploded and he died on the spot. Sui Hong sneered and hit the clouds with his rod. He shouted, "Is there no one left in my family? Why are you sending these trash to die?" The disciples outside the array saw Sui Hong kill 6 core transformation cultivators in an instant. Adding the 3 from before, he had already killed 9 people. They didn't expect this person to be so fierce and domineering. Huang Fuzhou, who was standing outside the formation, was also shocked. He had come here with a plan. After all, he was interested in the position of the top 10 disciples. Now that there was an opportunity, he must seize it. However, he wasn't a reckless person. He didn't have much confidence in Sui Hong's strength. He wanted to wait for others to test Sui Hong's strength before going forward. However, there was someone who might not let him have his way. The white-haired old Taoist bowed to Qi Yuntian and said, "Eldest senior brother, Immortal Qin once said that Huang Fuzhou's junior brother Huang's cultivation is profound and his cultivation is not ordinary. He is qualified to be one of the top 10 disciples. That Sui Hong's ability is not small, since junior brother Huang is so good, why not order him to capture this person?" Chapter 345. The white-haired old Taoist's words were extremely resounding, and everyone heard them. Huang Fuzhou was startled, but after thinking about it for a moment, he knew that this was not the time for him to shrink back. He took a deep breath and had no choice but to take the initiative to step forward. He bowed and said, eldest senior brother, junior brother is willing to go and fight Sui Hong. Qi Yuntian said slowly, does junior brother Huang need help? Just say it. The white-haired Taoist shook his head, eldest senior brother, junior brother Huang wants to be one of the top 10 disciples, he is very ambitious, if others help, wouldn't it be belittling him? Qi Yuntian laughed and said, it's my fault. Huang Fuzhou's heart skipped a beat, he originally wanted to find a few people from the same sect to help him, but how could he do that now? He subconsciously looked at Qi Yuntian, seeing the calmness in his eyes, as if he was also looking at him, he quickly lowered his head and said bitterly, eldest senior brother, I will be enough. Qi Yuntian revealed a smile and said gently, junior brother Huang's courage is commendable, Sui Hong is a strength path cultivator, his godly strength is shocking, the cloud-scraping rod in his hand can break many enchantments, you must be careful, if the situation is not good, then quickly come back, don't get injured, it will not be good. The more Huang Fuzhou heard, the colder his heart became. His original plan was to exchange a few blows with Sui Hong. If he had the chance, he would definitely capture him. But if he really wasn't a match for him, then he would just suffer some minor injuries and find an excuse to retreat. But Qi Yuntian's words clearly forced him into a corner, if he really did that, then how would immortal Qin see him? Would he think that he still admired the master and disciple lineage? That he actually did not want to help her sincerely? It seemed like he could only fight with his life on the line, he gritted his teeth, that Su family deceived the master and killed the ancestors, how would junior brother dare to cherish his life? Eldest senior brother and fellow disciples, please wait for the good news. The white-haired Taoist looked at Huang Fuzhou, then at Qi Yuntian, shook his head and sighed. He was very clear of Qi Yuntian's character, he was a magnanimous person, he did not care about the matter of Huang Fuzhou joining immortal Qin, but now that this person seemed to be obstructing the master and disciple lineage, there was no need to be polite. The only way was to beat him up. Huang Fuzhou cupped his hands once more and a streak of smoke flew out, heading towards the flag gate alone. At this time, Zhuang Bufan arrived on a cloud, brushing past his shoulder as he landed on the platform. With a wave of his sleeve, a gust of yellow qi flew out and dissipated. The 100 or so disciples who had been knocked off the clouds by Sui Hong had fallen below the stage, but they were all unconscious. Qi Yuntian nodded, junior brother Zhuang. Zhuang Bufan bowed to Qi Yuntian and retreated to the side. Qi Yuntian waved his hand, and someone went to rescue the hundreds of disciples. Although these people were disciples of aristocratic families, they were still disciples of the Yutzang sect. The 9 core formation cultivators were fine. But if those 100 disciples of Xian Light Xinyun God were killed for no reason, especially the core disciples from the disciples to the Qi sect disciples too. However, if those 100 or so mystic light realm disciples were killed for no reason, especially since many of them were true disciples. Not long after Huang Fuzhou left, Fang Hong waved his hand and called 2 Taoists over. He said in a low voice, junior brothers, listen carefully. I predict that Huang Fuzhou will not be able to win against Sui Hong. If he returns in defeat, the 2 of you will follow me to kill a way out and catch Sui Hong off guard. I'm sure that Huang Fuzhou won't be able to defeat Sui Hong. If he returns in defeat, the 2 of you will follow me to kill our way out and catch Sui Hong off guard. I am sure that Huang Fuzhou will not be able to win against Sui Hong. If he returns in defeat, the 2 of you will follow me and kill him. They had been told in advance that they had to listen to Qi Yuntian's orders and didn't dare to act rashly. Chen Guo hesitated and said, how do we explain to senior apprentice brother? Fang Hong smiled meaningfully and said, if Huang Fuzhou loses and we make a move, it will be in the name of rescuing a fellow disciple. Why would eldest senior brother blame us? Instead, he will only praise us for being benevolent and caring for our fellow disciples. Yu Qiyang came to a realization and praised sincerely, senior brother is brilliant. Chen Guo, however, was not so optimistic, senior brother, that Sui Hong is very powerful. Normal treasures cannot harm him. How will we deal with him? Fang Hong laughed and said confidently, don't worry, 2 junior brothers. Before coming here, Master has already given me the golden Jiluaal. This time, I will definitely be able to kill the enemy. Chen Guo's heart moved. Even if Fang Hong didn't get Immortal Zhu's permission, it was still tacit approval. She couldn't help but let out a breath and said, "That's good. We can try." Sui Hong just now displayed strength that was no weaker than the top 10 disciples. Fang Hong knew that it would be impossible to take him down by himself, so he did his best to rope in these two junior brothers. He grabbed each of their wrists to show his closeness and said sincerely, "After I kill that Sui Hong and sit on the position of the top 10 disciples, I will not mistreat you two junior brothers." Chen Guo and Yuqi Yang looked at each other and took a step back. They bowed and said, "We are willing to follow senior brother's orders." "Good." Fang Hong reached into his sleeve and took out a jade axe and a 3 chi long short jade spear, handing them to Yuqi Yang and Chen Guo respectively. He said, "This item is not a magical weapon, but it is still a treasure. It is made from the rocks of the southernmost land, Liucua Mountain. It contains its own spirituality and is even harder than metal and stone. It can cut through iron like mud and is not afraid of divine weapons." In a moment, "Shidi, do this." After he carefully warned them, the two understood and looked at the scene in the blink of an eye. They quietly moved to the northwest position and secretly waited for an opportunity. Huang Fuzhou arrived in front of the flag gate in a flash. When he was 30 feet away from Sui Hong, he dispersed the smoke and revealed himself. But facing this person, he didn't dare to be careless. He released a thin thread of starlight that twinkled in front of him and didn't reveal any flaws. Sui Hong looked up and down at Huang Fuzhou. He snorted and said, "There has to be a more decent one." Huang Fuzhou said in a low voice, "Sui Hong, the destruction of the Su clan is imminent. With your ability, if you force your way out, you still have some chance of winning. You don't need to be buried with the Su clan." Sui Hong snorted coldly and said, "Don't say such useless things. If you want to fight, then fight. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child?" Huang Fuzhou also shut himself off. He originally wanted to use the matter of the Su clan's imminent destruction to disturb Sui Hong's state of mind. He didn't expect the other's heart to be so firm. He couldn't find any loopholes. But in the next moment, his heart shivered. He was clearly admitting that he was inferior to the other and was afraid before the battle even started. That was why he wanted to use such a method to win. After coming to his senses, he hurriedly gathered his thoughts and threw away all distracting thoughts. His eyes also became focused. Sui Hong had long since become impatient. He spread out his staff and stepped on the clouds. Huang Fuzhou didn't dare to let him get close. As soon as the other entered, he turned into a beam of light and retreated like a meteor. After a few rounds, Sui Hong also knew he couldn't catch up to this person. He laughed mockingly and said, "Do you think I can't do anything to you?" He put away the cloud contact staff and took out a large engraved bow from his sleeve. He held the bow steadily with one hand and used the fingers of the other to catch the arrow, turning the arrowhead. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Huang Fuzhou. That arrowhead was as bright as a cold star, cold and threatening, as if it wanted to fly out and devour someone. Huang Fuzhou felt a chill all over his body when the arrow was pointed at him. He was instantly shocked. He originally wanted to wear down the other's spirit, but he didn't expect the other to have such a move. This could only be said that his luck was extremely bad. One wrong move and he lost the whole game. It was too late to attack now. He shouted urgently. He gathered up all the pill aura in his body and activated the technique. In an instant, a mirror-like golden light gathered in front of him. That starlight was illuminated by the scorching sun and suddenly flickered, releasing a blinding brilliance. Sui Hong was originally focused on this person, but he didn't expect such a change. His eyes instantly felt a stabbing pain, as if he was blind. He snorted and couldn't help but loosen his fingers. He loosened his fingers based on his feelings and shot the arrow. When the arrow hit the mirror-like light, it was like a broken gong or a broken silver vase. 10,000 specks of starlight flew out. Huang Fuzhou let out a shrill groan while his countenance turned ghastly pale. One of his arms was actually severed by the arrow that swiftly flew past, and it transformed into a clump of blood and flesh. Fortunately, he'd always been experienced in battle, so he didn't panic at the critical moment. He bit the tip of his tongue and didn't stop for even a moment before turning around and transforming into a golden ray of light that swiftly fled, and he vanished in the blink of an eye. Fang Hong and his two juniors had been waiting for a long time. Now that they saw this rare opportunity, how could they delay? Fang Hong leaped out and without a word, he threw out the golden Roji All in his hand. This object was difficult to detect when it flew up. With a flash, it had already torn through the refuge pearl cloud. Sui Hong didn't take it seriously and couldn't help but cry out. The golden all pierced through his back and came out of his chest. His body rushed forward and he spat out a mouthful of blood. But after walking a few steps, he stood firmly again. Yuqi Yang's face was fierce. Originally, they had agreed to attack from 100 feet away. Seeing Fang Hong succeed, he boldly rushed forward to within 5 feet of Sui Hong. He pointed at the jade axe in his hand and it trembled. It flew into the air and chopped down on Sui Hong's neck. Sui Hong's eyes hadn't recovered, but his reaction was extremely fast. As soon as he felt a chill on his neck, he immediately tilted his head and used his forehead to meet the blade of the axe. There was a muffled peng sound, as if metal had collided with stone. A cut immediately appeared on his forehead and blood flowed. His body was knocked back by the heavy jade axe. At this time, Chen Guo also silently appeared from below. Taking advantage of the time when he was knocked back, he threw out the 3-foot-long jade spear. The spear pierced through the air and with a puchi sound, it pierced through the back of Sui Hong's waist. Half of the spearhead went in. Sui Hong gave a muffled groan. His body trembled and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Yuqi Yang saw that the jade axe had only injured his flesh. He was afraid that by the time Sui Hong reacted, he would be in trouble. He gave a "ha" sound and not only did he not retreat, but he once again drove the jade axe that had been bounced away. The object circled around and chopped down from the side. Chen Guo and Yuqi Yang cooperated extremely well with Daoren. Coincidentally, when Sui Hong was stabbed by the jade spear, the jade axe flew over and immediately chopped into his neck. Just now, it stopped. Sui Hong's eyes finally had a bit of light. He felt the jade axe tremble, as if it was going to exert force again to chop off his head. He gave a cold snort and grabbed the jade axe with his hand. Yuqi Yang continuously made hand signs, but no matter how much force he exerted, the jade axe could not be retrieved. He was so anxious that cold sweat flowed down his forehead. Fang Hong saw that Sui Hong was so brave and tenacious and was also shocked. He made hand signs and a giant wooden pillar appeared out of thin air. It fell down with a hong long sound and smashed into the person's back. Immediately, he was knocked down from the clouds. The three of them just now let out a sigh of relief. But in the next moment, their expressions all changed. That Sui Hong actually stood up as if nothing had happened. His eyes were cold. One hand grabbed the golden awl and the other grabbed the jade axe. With a loud shout, he pulled it out. In a split second, blood gushed out like a fountain. He took a deep breath and activated his Xian Qi. The injuries on his body healed in an instant. In the blink of an eye, he was as good as new. Chapter 346. When Fang Hong, Chen Guo, and Yuqi Yang saw this, they did not say a word, and turned to leave. Under the repeated injuries, if it was anyone else, they would have died many times already. But for a strength path cultivator like Sui Hong, his body was strong and solid. If he was not killed in one shot, then there would be no more chances. Unless he sacrificed a lot of lives, and exhausted his vitality, then there would be a chance of victory. But Sui Hong was not alone. If he felt his strength was not enough, he could retreat into the formation door behind him at any time. As long as there were clan members to support him, and block the enemy for a while, he could take the pill and come back to fight. Fang Hong and the other two were disciples of the same master and disciple, to be able to cultivate to this stage, who knew how many battles they had gone through, and their eyes were all very sharp. Just now, when they saw Sui Hong about to stand up, they had already retreated far away. They were also able to let go, seeing that there was no point in continuing to fight. They immediately gave up their original plan, and escaped very quickly. As for the Ji Luo Golden Awl, Fang Hong also did not hesitate to give it up, not worried at all that it would fall into the opponent's hands. This magic weapon was a profound weapon. Without being refined, one could forget about using it. Today, the Su family was going to die. Once this person died, would there be any fear of not getting it back? Sui Hong held his rod horizontally, his eyes fierce, staring at the backs of the three. He shouted angrily, "Scoundrels! You have the guts to sneak and attack, but don't have the guts to stay and fight." Fang Hong and the other two ignored him. No matter how arrogant Sui Hong was, he did not dare to leave the formation door. As long as he did not hurt himself, they did not care how fiercely he scolded them. Under the strange gazes of the people, the three returned to the formation platform. But they did not dare to leave without permission, and came in front of Qi Yuntian, feeling somewhat apprehensive, and said awkwardly, "Eldest senior brother, just now thinking of our fellow sect members, we were a bit rash." Qi Yuntian did not wait for him to finish, and indifferently waved his hand, saying, "The three junior brothers are not at fault, step to the side." How could he not know Fang Hong's temperament? This person was the most opportunistic. Once he grasped a sliver of opportunity, he would dare to fight with his life. In the previous battle in the eagle-perching continent, it was because of this that he was captured by the three lake demons. He had already judged in his heart that these three people would not be useful in the future, but he did not have the time to bother with them right now. He ordered them to retreat to the side and no longer paid attention to them. Qi Yuntian looked around at the disciples below the platform and shouted, "Is there anyone else who wants to step forward? You want to fight with Sui Hong?" Everyone hesitated for a moment. The fact that Sui Hong didn't collapse despite his injuries was something that everyone present had witnessed. They knew that they didn't have any magical treasures with them. Only if dozens of people attacked at the same time would they have the confidence to win. Perhaps a few lives would be lost, and he might even be one of them. Thus, he didn't dare to casually reply. After Fang Hong returned to the stage, he thought about the battle just now, and felt that if he had been more daring, he would have been able to win. He might still have a chance to kill Sui Hong. Just as he was feeling vexed, he suddenly saw some of the disciples in the distance suddenly become restless. Their expressions were somewhat excited, and there were even people shouting. He couldn't help but ask in surprise, what happened? Then, he found out the answer. He saw a shocking rainbow streak across the sky. It went straight for Sui Hong. So it's that Zhang Yan. Fang Hong laughed coldly, and said in a muffled voice, even if the three of us go up, what use is he alone? Yu Qiyang and Chen Guo were deeply convinced. How brave was Sui Hong? Even though they thought highly of themselves, they still went up together. If it was one-on-one, they almost couldn't think of any way to kill this person. Sui Hong saw a sword light flying over. His eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. He squinted his eyes and took the bow and arrow in his hand. He lowered his waist into a horse stance and once again pulled the bow and arrow, the sharp arrow pointing towards the sky. This bow and arrow of his was called the Flat Mountain Bow. It could shoot monsters and spirit beasts. A distance of 100 miles would be covered in an instant. Those who were hit would have no way out. Even a graze would cause broken limbs and broken bones. After only aiming for a moment, he loosened his fingers. The bowstring vibrated beside his ears, and a black shadow let out a mournful howl. Like a bolt of lightning, it suddenly shot out. Even though the arrow light was sharp, Zhang Yan didn't dodge. He was still calm and composed. With a thought, a sword light leapt in front of him and met it in the air. With a clang, he blocked it. He then reached out and grabbed the arrow. He actually accurately caught the arrow in his hand. After playing with it for a moment, he pinched the arrowhead with both hands and exerted force. With a "Kacha," the arrow broke into two and he threw it down the cloud. Sui Hong's pupils shrank. He let out a shout and shook the hundreds of instruments on the cloud above his head into the air. With a point of his finger, these instruments flashed with thousands of fireflies and flew towards Zhang Yan in front of him. Zhang Yan's expression was calm. With a spell, the water-colored light screen flashed in front of him, and the hundreds of instruments disappeared in an instant. Sui Hong's gaze instantly froze. His fists made cracking sounds, and a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. He said loudly, "Good. Such an opponent is just now interesting." Zhang Yan stopped 10 feet in front of him and stood with his hands behind his back. He was calm and composed. His body was surrounded by clouds and light smoke. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and he was full of Dao Qi. Sui Hong had also seen Zhang Yan's battle with Xiao Sha and Du De in the grand competition. He had also seen the endless methods that Zhang Yan had. He knew that Zhang Yan was a strong opponent. Although he was confident that he could win, he didn't dare to be careless. Especially when Zhang Yan's sword escape was brilliant. If he blindly dodged, he wouldn't be able to do anything under the situation where his arrows were useless. Thus, for the first time, he took a defensive stance and didn't rush forward to attack. Seeing this, Zhang Yan didn't hold back and shouted, "Fellow Taoist Su, be careful." He stretched out his hand and pointed. The stars leaped into the sky, and the sword light suddenly transformed into a rainbow light that split into 10 flying swords. Sui Hong shook the cloud-scraping staff in his hand and spun it like a dance. It produced a series of whooshing sounds and clanging sounds, blocking all of the sword lights. After a while, he said impatiently, "Zhang Yan, how can this thing hurt?" Before he finished speaking, another sword light suddenly separated from the dancing blue light. This time, it was even faster than the previous flying sword. This came very suddenly and at a very close distance. Sui Hong couldn't help but be startled. He only had time to tilt his head and the sword light brushed past his ear. He felt a burning sensation on his cheek. He reached out to touch it and found that half of his ear had been taken away. He licked the blood that flowed to the corner of his mouth. Using his Xian Qi, the other half of his ear grew back. Although he didn't fear the slashes of flying swords, if he was injured, it would still be painful. He had always been able to block when he could. Zhang Yan made him see blood the moment he came up. Feeling humiliated, killing intent immediately filled his chest. Zhang Yan smiled faintly. With one revolution of his cultivation technique, the Xian Huang giant hand appeared above his head. He spread his fingers and grabbed downwards. Sui Hong shouted loudly and swung his staff. He raised his hand and hit the Xian Qi hand. Following the sound of tremors, the hand dissipated and exploded into a yellow mist. He leaped into the air and arrived above Zhang Yan's head. He roared loudly and in an instant, the wind and clouds rolled and stirred up like a tide. The wind blew his clothes and it seemed like there was a boundless force that wrapped Zhang Yan in a cyclone, making it difficult for him to escape. Sui Hong's eyes burst with light. He grabbed the end of the staff with both hands and gathered all the strength in his body. He first raised it up high, then with a loud roar, he swung it down. Zhang Yan stood in the middle of the cyclone, his clothes fluttering in the wind. His treasured clothes suddenly emitted a bright light that spread out several feet, protecting him within. The veins on Sui Hong's neck bulged. He let out a mischievous roar that caused the sky to rumble. The cloud-scraping staff in his hand descended with the momentum of splitting a mountain. There was an explosion in the air. His cudgel caused the radiance to cave in. Only then did he reveal a happy expression. However, when the cloud-scraping cudgel reached Zhang Yan's forehead, there was a pang sound and sparks shot out. Sui Hong looked over and couldn't help but feel his heart palpitate. He saw that Zhang Yan was standing there without moving, as if he didn't feel anything. He knew that if Zhang Yan took this blow, he would either die or be crippled. However, he didn't see that the other party wasn't injured at all. He couldn't help being stunned and bewildered. Zhang Yan shouted, "It's impolite not to reciprocate. Fellow Taoist Su, come and have a taste of Ai's technique." He formed a hand seal and there was a loud sound of tides. A ray of watercolored light flew out from his back and instantly dispersed the wind and clouds as it swept over. Sui Hong recognized that this was the technique Zhang Yan used during the competition. He didn't know the details and didn't want to take it head-on. He hurriedly executed the ground shrink divine art in an attempt to escape from the battle. However, the ray of water surged over with the force of a rushing flood. The two of them were extremely close to each other, so he couldn't run away in time. He only took a step forward and was sucked into the water. He instantly felt as if he had stepped into a turbulent torrent. The tide surged back and forth, shaking him so much that he couldn't stand. Zhang Yan's eyes flickered when he saw that his ability to shrink had been restrained. He waved his sleeve and a loud noise was heard. It sounded like countless pieces of wood and stones were moving. A thick and solid yellow light rushed into the air and spread out over 100 zhang. It crossed the blue sky and covered the sun, covering the earth and sky as it came down. Sui Hong saw that the yellow ray was falling from the sky like a mountain that was about to collapse. Before it came down, he felt suffocated and his chest tightened. He could tell that it didn't come with good intentions. He held the rod horizontally and with his divine strength, he exerted strength in his arms and with a ha, he blocked it. The two collided and a loud sound suddenly came from the horizon. Sui Hong felt a sweetness in his throat and a bloody smell rushed into his mouth. The web between his thumb and forefinger split open and his arms were broken. He couldn't help but stagger back. Zhang Yan stood on top of the cloud and sneered. This earth element true light was as heavy as a mountain. Luckily, Sui Hong cultivated the path of strength. If it was an ordinary cultivator who dared to take it head-on, they would have long since been crushed into dust. Zhang Yan activated another technique, causing the yellow light to rise several tens of feet into the air. Then, he released the restraints and pressed down once more. Sui Hong was entangled by the water element true light and couldn't get away. He had no choice but to circulate his Xian technique and slightly recover from his injuries. He also raised the cloud scraping rod in his hand. His eyes were red and he used all his strength to block the yellow ray. He felt his vision go black and spat out a mouthful of blood. He almost couldn't hold the divine weapon in his hand. Zhang Yan shook his sleeve and laughed, "Sui Hong, let's see how long you can last." He divided the earth element true light into dozens of rays. They lined up and fell down one after another, smashing down one after another. For a moment, the battlefield was like a pile being hammered. Boom, boom, boom. After suffering dozens of attacks, Sui Hong spat out blood again and again. He finally couldn't hold on any longer and the cloud-scraping rod flew out of his hand. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed and the water element true light swept out. In a flash, Sui Hong disappeared without a trace. The thousands of disciples in the field were stunned when they saw how easily he took care of Sui Hong. It was as if they were in a dream. Fang Hong and his junior brothers were also dumbfounded and couldn't make a sound. Chapter 347. After Zhang Yan captured Sui Hong, he naturally wasn't willing to lose the opportunity to destroy the flag door, so he let out a clear howl and flew with his sword, transforming into a ray of light that shot straight into the formation door. Just now, a fog flashed in front of him, and he couldn't tell the way forward. It was as if this kind of obstacle couldn't stop him at all. He took out the star sword orb and used a spell to open up a path. A cold light cut through the clouds and the turbid air, and it flew forward as if there was no one there. After traveling for about 5 miles, the fog in front of him opened up, and a formation platform that was 10 feet tall appeared. There was a tall decorated archway on top of it. It had eaves and corners, and it was 10 feet tall. It was made of jade, and the roof tiles were made of glass. It was crystal clear and eye-catching. At this moment, there was a group of people guarding the formation platform. There were about 40 to 50 of them, and most of them were at the mystic light realm. There were also a few core formation cultivators. Seeing Zhang Yan come over, a middle-aged Taoist who looked steady and mature walked out of the crowd. He bowed and said loudly, "Is the guru of Qinsang school here?" Seeing that they didn't have any hostility, Zhang Yan put away the sword light and looked around coldly. He said, "Who are you?" The middle-aged Taoist bowed respectfully and said, "Guru, we are all guests under the Su family. Just now, when Sui Hong left, he ordered us to guard this place, and he said that if any outsiders come, we must kill them." Zhang Yan looked at him and said with interest, "Then why didn't you follow his orders and attack when you saw me coming?" The middle-aged Taoist said loudly, "We are not blind and deaf. Right now, the people besieged outside are all disciples of the Qinsang school. This must be because the Su family has done something that angers the heavens and people. Just now, it has attracted fellow disciples to attack. We naturally do not wish to wallow in the mire with them. They were only the helpers that the Su clan had recruited on a daily basis, and knew nothing about the clan's secrets. Moreover, most of them were rogue cultivators from outside the clan, and none of them were loyal to the Su clan. Of course, they were unwilling to be dragged into the fire pit by the Su clan for no reason." Zhang Yan let out a low laugh and said, "Lady Su has already committed the crime of deceiving her master and destroying her ancestors. If you don't want to die, you should know what to do." When the middle-aged Taoist heard this, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright. Whether it was the Xianmen or the demonic Dao, it was an extremely heavy crime. Anyone who dared to associate themselves with him would be tired of living for too long. He composed himself and angrily said, "So that's how it is, Lady Su has bullied me too much. They are heartless. Don't blame us for being unjust. These dozens of people weren't good people either." When they heard Zhang Yan's words, their hearts were clear. If they wanted to completely disassociate themselves from the Su clan, the only way was to attack. Zhang Yan waited for a moment. Seeing that they were still standing in the same place, he couldn't help but frown and say, "Why haven't you all left yet?" The middle-aged Taoist's face revealed an awkward expression, and he said, "We don't know formations, so we can't easily leave this place. If we walk rashly, I'm afraid we'll be lost in the formation." Zhang Yan lifted his sleeve and pointed. He said, "Why don't we destroy this flag gate?" The middle-aged Taoist smiled bitterly and said, "This flag gate is very sturdy. I heard from the Su clan that when it was first built, a total of more than 90,000 pieces of green jade and 300 pieces of heavy wood were used. It was also inscribed with talisman restrictions. With our strength, I'm afraid we won't be able to do anything. Master, why don't you invite a Yuanying spiritual master to come here? He will definitely be able to break this gate." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "It's just a flag gate, why would a spiritual master need to make a move? There's no need to go through so much trouble, I can handle it myself." When the middle-aged Taoist and the people behind him heard him speak so confidently, they didn't believe him in their hearts. It wasn't that they didn't secretly try before, but no matter how much strength they used to attack, the flag gate didn't budge an inch. How could it be destroyed by one person's strength? Zhang Yan didn't say much. He activated his Xian Qi, and in a split second, a ray of true light of the earth element came out and pressed on the flag gate. Then, he activated his mana. As he continued to activate his Dan Fiend, the true light became heavier and heavier. In the end, it almost solidified, as if a real mountain was pressing down. Not long after, the flag gate started to creak and shake. Everyone present couldn't help but be shocked. After a while, the flag gate finally couldn't take it anymore. With a rumble, smoke and dust flew everywhere, and it actually collapsed. Once the flag gate was gone, the entire formation was broken, and the bewildering mist instantly dispersed. Above the sky, there was a clear sky once again. The middle-aged Taoist opened his mouth wide in shock. Just now, he came back to his senses. When he looked at Zhang Yan again, his eyes were filled with reverence. Zhang Yan said indifferently, the flag formation is broken, all of you can go." How could these disciples dare to stay any longer? They cupped their hands at Zhang Yan and hurriedly flew away. All of them wanted to find a Su clan disciple to kill so that they could clear their names. On the flag platform, only Zhang Yan was left. He took out a beautiful piece of jade from his sleeve and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Su, go out and take a look. If you can find the location of the true Dragon Manor, you must think of a way to go in and take a look. If you succeed, there's no harm in me gifting your big brother's corporeal body to you." Su Yang couldn't help but be excited. If he had a corporeal body, then he wouldn't have to be a devil that didn't see the light of day. He immediately stood up from the jade and bowed. "I'll obey Master's orders." His figure shook and he circulated a technique. Instantly, 5 split souls flew out from the jade and flew in all directions, leaving only the main soul within the jade. These split souls were shapeless and formless, and they were strands of impure thoughts condensed from filthy yin qi. They couldn't harm others by themselves. But once they entered the body of another, they would be able to incite all sorts of distracting thoughts in one's heart at any time, and it would cause one to completely lose one's consciousness. To a disciple with an unstable disposition and weak will, it was truly difficult to resist. After the split souls left the jade, they were afraid of the radiance of the day, so they hid underground. 4 of the split souls didn't find anything even after searching for a long time. Only the 5th split soul unintentionally discovered an underground passageway that led to an unknown place. When it sensed the aura of a living person within it, it followed the passageway. After going down for who knows how many miles, Su Yang arrived at an underground palace. He floated to the end, but there was a stone door blocking his way. The split souls were shapeless and incorporeal, so it was natural for him to pass through the stone door. But just as he was about to move forward, he stopped. He faintly felt a sense of danger and guessed that it was some kind of talisman spell to defend against ghosts and devils. He instantly didn't dare to move forward. However, he wasn't willing to retreat just like that. Just as he was in a dilemma, he saw the stone door rumble open and a rather handsome child suddenly walked out. This child's cultivation was low and hadn't opened his meridians. His realm was far from Su Yang's, so he naturally couldn't sense his existence. The child searched the table for a while, as if he had taken something. After placing it in his bosom, he was about to return to the stone door. This was a rare opportunity, so Su Yang didn't think too much. He drilled into the child's body and then dove into the depths of his acupoints, shrinking as much as possible. However, what made him pleasantly surprised was that even though the child was young, he was like an adult. However, he was like an adult, with many distracting thoughts and complicated emotions. This was suitable for him to hide his tracks. The child suddenly felt like a cold wind was blowing on his body, and he couldn't help but shiver, shrinking his neck. He straightened his collar and walked inside. Hiding in his physical body, the restrictions stopped ringing and Sui Hong was able to safely pass through the door. Actually, a devil like him wouldn't be able to barge into the restrictions of Surging Waves Lake. Not to mention sneaking into this place. The reason why these few talismans were here was because of the habit of the person who built the cave, casually doing it. Actually, he didn't care much about it. Otherwise, if he had laid it out properly, he wouldn't have been able to enter this underground palace. The child returned to the hall. He passed through 2 more layers of palaces before standing still and bowing towards the 5 Daran people, 5 old ancestors. Grandson has seen clearly that Dalong and third uncle's life tablets have cracked. Su Yang's heart trembled. Although he didn't dare to look outside, he knew that the only people in the sect who could be called old ancestors were the 5 Yuanying elders. Back then, his cultivation wasn't enough. He had seen these 5 elders from afar, and that was with Sui Hong. Just now. At this moment, he didn't dare to make any movements, doing his best to shrink his soul, afraid that he would be seen through. An old and tired voice rang out, who would have thought that Dalong wouldn't even last a day before dying. Outside the cave, there's probably no one guarding. AI, if it was 100 years ago, how would it be like this? Just as he finished speaking, someone said in a low voice, "Today is a calamity for our Su family. Since we can't leave, we'll just have to die with our clan." At this time, a slightly hoarse voice rang out, saying urgently, "Third brother, we can't delay any longer, we have to make a decision." Sui Hong didn't understand what these people were talking about, but he guessed that these people were probably planning how to escape. There was an indescribable joy in his heart, and he thought to himself, to think that you guys were so high up in the past, who would have thought that there would be a day like this? The old voice sighed and said, "Sui Hua, come over." Sui Yang felt that the boy he was possessing acknowledged and walked forward. At this moment, he didn't dare to move at all, afraid that he would be discovered. The boy stood in front of a benevolent-looking Daoran. This Daoran looked at him carefully, stretched out his hand, and pinched his body a few times. He nodded and said, "Not bad, the spirit root and the bones are beautiful. The person who chose you to come here was thoughtful, but it's a pity that you're too smart, so your emotions are too complicated. If you were to train for a few more years, it would be fine, but there's no such chance now." At this moment, there was a sudden tremor, and a handful of dust fell from the top. The hoarse voice anxiously said, "Third brother, what are you waiting for? If you don't act now, it'll be too late." The Daoran sighed and said, "Forget it, the matter is urgent. Grandson, go and get that magic sword." The boy obeyed and walked to the east wall. He took a quaint magic sword from the wall and came down. The Daoran said again, "Go and stand at your ninth great-uncle's place." The boy didn't dare to disobey. Like a marionette, he walked to a gray-clothed, white-haired old man and stood still. A ray of light shot out of the Daoran's eyes, and he said in a deep voice, "Listen, when your ninth great-uncle escapes Yuanying, you kill him." When the boy heard this, his body trembled, and he was so scared that he threw the magic sword away. He lay on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly, crying, "Old ancestor, grandson has never disobeyed you." The Daoran snorted and said with some annoyance, "How can I not know whether you have such thoughts or not? If I tell you to do it, just do it. The time is pressing. Hurry up and get up. Do you want to kill us?" The boy stood up in fear and took the magic sword in his hand. Although his arms were trembling, he could still hold it firmly. The gray-clothed Taoist took a look and said in a deep voice, "Third brother, I'll take my leave first." After saying that, he patted the back of his head, and a Yuanying escaped from the top. At that moment, the Daoran shouted, "Sui Hua, what are you waiting for?" The boy was shocked when he heard that. He gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. He made up his mind and swung the sword. Wherever the sword light passed, a white-haired head rolled to the ground. Chapter 348. Although the head of the Taoist's 6 sons fell, after the Yuanying escaped from his body, he wrapped his primordial spirit and fell into a large drum, disappearing in an instant. This drum was called Qin Yang drum. It was the cultivation weapon passed down through the generations of the Qin Yang Su family. With the protection of this magic treasure, one could be sent to reincarnate, and it could preserve some of his previous life's memories, so he would not enter the world again and lose his true spirit. The magic sword was stained with blood, and in an instant, it let out a ray of light, as if it was being reflected by candlelight. The Daoran stood up and took a few glances, then turned to a skinny Taoist with drooping eyelids and said, "Seventh brother, it's your turn." The skinny Taoist snorted and said to the boy coldly, "Come here, send me on my way." After saying that, he shook his body, and the Yuanying escaped from his head, and he also jumped into the Qin Yang drum. The boy had just killed a Yuanying Jinren, and he thought he was in a dream, but when he was called, he immediately quivered and came back to his senses. He first looked at his ancestor, and when he saw that there was no expression on his face, he calmed himself down. After this, his courage seemed to have grown a lot, and after calming his breathing, he walked in front of the skinny Taoist, raised the magic sword up high, and swung it down. The blade of the sword sliced through the neck without any delay, and the Taoist's head rolled down. The magic sword passed through the blood, and originally it was like ordinary iron reflecting light, but now, looking at it from afar, it seemed to be even brighter than just now, giving off a lustrous light like jade. It really is a killing sword, boy, it's my turn. In the southeast corner, a white-robed cultivator stood up. This person had a smile on his face, as if he was very open to life and death, and he didn't forget to tidy up his clothes, then took out a pot of wine and drank 2 mouthfuls, saying, "Boy, do it quickly, then just now you will look happy." The boy came up, and after killing 2 people, he had also adapted a lot, so he came up and wanted to slash. But the white-robed cultivator used his fingers to pinch the blade of the sword. He waved his hand and said, "Wait, let me drink another mouthful of wine." The old Taoist frowned and said, "Fifth brother, what time is it? Why don't you put away your lazy attitude?" The white-robed cultivator laughed heartily and stretched his head forward, revealing his smooth, white neck. He clapped his hands and said, "Charge over here." The boy gripped the hilt of his sword and aimed at that place. With a shout, he raised his sword and chopped down. Pooh! This person's head also fell off. With a flash of blood-red light, a Yuanying jumped out from the severed neck and entered the Qin-Yang great drum. At this moment, the Taoist with the hoarse voice waved his sleeves and stood up. This person's hair was tied into 2 buns. His eyebrows were bright, and he had a mustache. His clothes were simple and elegant, and he had the air of an immortal. He raised his head and sighed. If it had been a day or 2 later, why would we have lost our lives in vain? Now, he could only give up his physical body. When he reincarnates in the future, he will look for a fated chance. Daoren also sighed, "Third brother, be careful." The Taoist bowed and then straightened his back, not moving at all. Due to his aura, the boy actually didn't dare to step forward. Daoren looked at him and pushed him. The boy couldn't help but take a few steps forward. When he raised his head, he saw that the Taoist was right in front of him. He didn't think much and used the momentum he had just now to swing the sword with both hands. Blood splattered, and the head was chopped off. After killing 4 nascent soul cultivators in a row, the boy suddenly felt weak and almost collapsed to the ground. Doran's eyes lit up and he shouted, "Quickly throw away the sword." The boy didn't think and immediately let go, throwing the sword away. However, the sword didn't fall to the ground. Instead, it buzzed and flew in the air. It seemed to have a mind of its own. The old Taoist stretched out his hand and grabbed the sword. He stared blankly at the cold blade that was as clear as autumn water. His gaze was complicated and it was hard to tell if he was happy or sad. He mumbled, "It's done." This sword was a killing sword. It was one of perfected Sumo's belongings. It was said that it was taken from a demonic cultivator. There was a strange thing about this sword. The higher the cultivation of the person killed by it, the more powerful it was. That day, Sumo was afraid that he couldn't control this sword, so he forcefully erased the sword's spirit and refined it for his own use. Later, he gave it to Daoren. Now, they used the lives of 4 Yuanying perfected cultivators to nourish this sword. They wanted to borrow the sword's power to cut open the last restriction on the true dragon manner. Then, they would let Daoren charge in and try with all their strength to see if he could use the remains of the azure dragon to form a grotto heaven. If he succeeded, he might be able to escape with his life. Daoren held the sword and stood up. He stared at the heavy stone gate in front of him. This restriction had been refined by the 5 of them for more than 20 years. Originally, with a few more years of hard work, they would be able to succeed. Even if it dragged on for a day or 2 and a key restriction was broken, there would be 1 less person who would be sacrificed to the sword. However, they didn't expect that before a day had passed, the formation outside had already been broken. They had no choice but to sacrifice 4 Yuanying perfected cultivators to feed this killing sword. The price they paid was huge. However, it was useless to think about it now. He muttered a few words and bit the tip of his tongue. He spat a mouthful of essence blood onto the tip of the sword. Then, he tossed the sword into the air. It turned into a pure white light and viciously slashed down on the restriction. There was a thunderous explosion. the rumbling sound spread far and wide. Even the Chinsang school's mountain gate could hear it clearly. Daoren waved his sleeves and swept away the dust. When he looked again, he saw that the restriction was gone and the gate was wide open. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. He put the Qinyang drum into his sleeves and impatiently flew in. Suyang saw that the gate of the True Dragon Manor was broken and couldn't help but be shocked. He wanted to go in and take a look, but he was worried that the other party would discover him. After thinking for a long time, he finally made up his mind. Just as he was about to stir up the distracting thoughts in the child's heart and entice him to enter the manor, he heard a voice from inside, "Suihua, come in." When the child heard the ancestor call his name, he felt a wave of fear in his heart. However, if the ancestor wanted to kill him, he could do so with just a wave of his hand. He couldn't resist. After nervously entering the room, he looked around and saw that it was empty. There were no pillars or beams, only a stone tablet standing alone in the middle of the hall. There were thick chains leading in all directions from the top. When he looked carefully, he realized that he was on a copper plate that was suspended in the air. However, it was pitch black below him, and he couldn't see anything clearly. At this moment, Doran's face was filled with uncertainty as he stared at the stone tablet in a daze. Just now, he had come in. Originally, he had the heart to cut off all means of retreat, but after seeing this item, his determination to rise up receded like the tide. This stone tablet was the key to the True Dragon Manor. There was a large formation on it called the Seven Stars Great Shift Formation. If this formation could be activated, it could move the entire manor to another place. But because of that, the old Taoist hesitated. He slashed open the gate. Previously, he was forced into a corner and wanted to fight to the death to achieve the position of the Heavenly Grotto Heaven. However, putting aside the fact that there was only a sliver of hope, the moment he stepped into the Elephant Realm, the Black Azure Sect's heavenly abode would rush over to kill him, and he would want to escape. If he wanted to escape, it would be extremely difficult. Originally, he had no way out and had to do this. However, after entering the manor, the stone tablet gave him another choice. He couldn't help but hesitate. However, the reason why he didn't move was because he had no other choice. If he wanted to move such a huge True Dragon Manor, it would consume a lot of spiritual energy. He wasn't 100% confident and might not succeed even if he lost his life. After thinking about it a few times, he felt that there was a higher chance of moving the manor. Since he had made up his mind, he gave up on his previous thoughts. He placed his hand on the stone tablet and poured spiritual energy into it, activating the formation. However, when he activated the teleportation formation just now, he felt all the magic power in his body gushing out like a broken dam. He couldn't help but frown and suddenly said, "Junior brothers, quickly come out and help me." The moment he said that, the four Yuanying jumped out together. They used their strength at the same time and the entire stone tablet shone. However, they didn't have physical bodies, so every bit of magic power they used was a bit less. After a short while, the four nascent souls that were originally shining with golden light became dim. It seemed like they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. After a few more breaths, the four nascent souls were finally exhausted, turning into specks of light and dispersing. Without the protection of the four nascent souls returned to his sleeve. At this moment, the stone tablet was still a little short. Daoren knew with one look that unless he was willing to disperse his own Yuanying and pour all his spiritual energy into it, he definitely wouldn't be able to activate the formation. However, if he did that, his cultivation would also completely dissipate. He had already lived for more than 900 years. If he wanted to refine his cultivation back, it would be impossible. He sighed in his heart and said, "Forget it." He turned his head and shouted at the boy, "Suihua, remember this. After we leave, you must guard this cave well and wait patiently for us to reincarnate. In the future, when the Su clan is restored, we will remember you as the greatest merit." The boy didn't understand and answered in a daze. Daoren didn't have time to talk to him and shouted, "Qin Yangzhenren, I hope you can take care of this bloodline for my clan. At this moment, a ray of light flashed by and a yellow-clothed youth walked out. He said mockingly, "The Su clan's descendants are useless, yet they want this old man to take care of a disciple who hasn't opened his meridians. If this gets out, I won't have the face to see my old friends again." Daoran said, "The Su clan is about to be destroyed. Without my Su clan's bloodline to refine, I'm afraid Jinren will never be able to achieve Dao." The youth glanced at him and said, "Don't use this to threaten me. How can I not understand this logic? If it wasn't for Su Mo not listening to my advice and overestimating his own strength to fight that fierce person, even his spirit couldn't escape. How would your Su clan end up in such a state today?" Daoran was silent. The youth looked at him and said unhappily, "All right, this old man doesn't have the mood to teach the younger generation a lesson today." He turned around and said to the boy with a smile that wasn't a smile, "Kid, you got lucky. Let's see how your luck is." He raised his hand and patted the top of the boy's head and put him away. Then, he himself also turned into light and disappeared. Seeing that the path of retreat had been arranged properly, Daoran no longer hesitated and shouted loudly. Yuanying escaped out of the top of the door and operated the formation with all his might. In a split second, it was as if the sky and earth were collapsing and the mountains were collapsing. With a loud sound that shook the heavens, the entire surging waves lake was tossed up. The true dragon manor that was originally several dozen miles underground shifted in the blink of an eye and went somewhere unknown. At this moment, Zhang Yan was standing on the flag platform and hadn't gone deep into the abode. So he naturally noticed the great commotion below, and he pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "Fellow Taoist Su, do you know what's going on below?" Su Yi said angrily, reporting to Old Master, that Su clan's old ancestor actually broke the door of the true dragon manor and activated the teleportation formation within. He has already moved the entire cave to another place. Zhang Yan couldn't help but be a little surprised and asked, "Do you know where they went?" Su Yi thought for a moment and said with a little uncertainty, "Even if my separated soul went thousands of miles away, I would still be able to sense it. But right now, I can't sense it at all. I'm afraid. I'm afraid it's no longer above the Donghua continent." Chapter 349. After the protective formation was broken, more than 1,000 cultivators rushed into the cave residence. Because the 5 nascent soul cultivators were nowhere to be seen, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive, coupled with Sui Hong's defeat and the numerous guests' betrayal, in less than half a day, the entire abode was razed to the ground. Besides the servants and maids, all the cultivators of the Su clan were slaughtered. Then came the news that Su Wentian had been personally killed by Ning Chongxian. The various caves of the Su clan in the mountain gate had also been cleaned up, and all the disciples had been killed. The spirit island of the continent and Chifeng Xiu mansion that they had occupied were all taken back by the mountain gate. After the sect master received the decree, the Su clan was removed from the Qinsang school in just over a day. The thousands of years of the sect had disappeared in a day. Qi Yuntian ordered his trusted subordinates to count the gains of this trip. Then, he made a record and divided it into 2 books. Then, he took the disciples back to the floating heavenly palace. The group returned to the floating heavenly palace. Qi Yuntian ordered the disciples to wait outside the hall while he entered the hall alone and presented the record. After listening to the detailed report, Sect Master Qin first praised him and then ordered him to step aside. Qi Yuntian bowed and stood behind Meng Zhen. Immortal Yen frowned slightly and said, "Sect Master, those traitorous disciples have moved the true dragon mansion to another place. We must guard against them." Sect Master Qin waved his horsetail whisk and said, "The immortal graveyard of the true dragon mansion has its own fate. There is no need to worry. The Su clan's fate has come to an end. The remaining members are not a threat." All the immortals in the hall knew that the sect master's cultivation was profound. Since he said this, he must have thought about it, so he didn't say anything more. Sun Jinren glanced at Immortal Qin and said loudly, "Sect Master, now that the Su clan has been eliminated, Su Wentian and Sui Hong have been killed, the top 10 disciples can be replaced." Sect Master Qin smiled and said, "The day before yesterday, you all said that whoever can take down that Sui Hong will be able to take over his position. Yuntian, tell me, how did that Sui Hong lose this battle?" Hearing the sect leader's question, Qi Yuntian hurriedly bowed and said, reporting to the sect leader, "The one who defeated Sui Hong today is Zhou's disciple, Zhang Yan." The sect leader nodded slightly and praised, "Good. This is a good disciple." As soon as these words were spoken, Zhang Yan's position as one of the top 10 disciples was already set in stone, and there was no room for dispute. Immortal Peng's beautiful eyes lit up, and a ripple appeared on the corners of her red lips. On the other hand, Taoist Master Qin's expression was somewhat ugly. Although she had repeatedly tried to stop Taoist Master Peng from entering the trap, in the end, she didn't even hesitate to muddy the waters. But even so, she still couldn't suppress Zhang Yan. At this point, she was powerless to stop it. Meng Zhen pondered for a moment. However, the seating arrangement of the 10 disciples will have to be reconsidered. He turned his head slightly and said, "Sage Peng, what do you think?" After Qi Yuntian lost his position, the ranking of the disciples after him rose. Now, Hua Xian was the first among the 10 disciples. Ning Chongxian and Su Wentian fought to a draw, but because they didn't decide the winner with Sui Hong, he was ranked 9th, while Sui Hong was ranked 8th. Now that Sui Hong was eliminated by Zhang Yan, according to this ranking, Zhang Yan should be ranked before Ning Chongxian. Taoist Master Peng bowed to Meng Zhen and said, "Senior brother Meng, although Zhang Yan's cultivation is not bad, he is still a latecomer. But in the end, he is a latecomer. Since martial nephew Ning entered the list first, in junior sister's humble opinion, it is appropriate for him to be ranked before Zhang Yan." Putting Ning Chongxian in front was to take care of Sun Jinren's face and to convey goodwill. Sun Jinren was also well aware of this and immediately accepted the kindness. However, as Taoist Master Dong Tian, he naturally wouldn't take advantage of Zhang Yan. He smiled and said, "Zhang Yan is indeed a good disciple. It's not in vain that I thought highly of him that day. Take it as a reward." He was a man of action. With a tap of his hand, a ray of light flew out of the hall. Zhang Yan was sitting outside the hall when he saw a ray of light heading straight for him. He stretched out his hand to catch it. He opened his palm and saw a smooth and flawless jade plate. His heart moved and he used his inspiration to explore it. He found that it was the second half of the Lan Yun's secret manual. He stood up and bowed. He was slightly happy and said loudly, "Thank you, Taoist Master, for the technique." From his point of view, there was no need to fight for the position of the top 10 disciples. Although it was related to the amount of external objects in cultivation, as long as one entered this position, even if he was ranked last, the benefits he would receive would be far beyond that of an ordinary disciple. He himself had the heavenly lake of Zhao Yu in hand, and he also had the support of Zhou Chengju, Taoist Master Peng and the others. He didn't need to care about these losses. Instead, he obtained the second half of the secret manual, which was a real benefit. If he studied it seriously, he would be able to add a lot of techniques. Sect leader Qin took the law ranking and crossed off Sui Hong's name, replacing it with Zhang Yan's name. After stamping it with his seal, he said, "From today onwards, these 10 people are the top 10 disciples of our sect. Yuntian, go and hang this list in the merit courtyard to announce to the sect." Qi Yuntian responded and stood up. He went forward to take the law ranking, bowed again and left the hall. The disciples outside the hall heard the words of the sect leader and the Taoist masters clearly. They couldn't help but look at Zhang Yan. Suddenly, 2 disciples who were closer to Zhang Yan stood up and bowed to him respectfully, "Greetings, senior brother Zhang." When they stood up, dozens of disciples nearby also woke up and bowed to him. In the end, hundreds of disciples stood up and said loudly, "Greetings, senior brother Zhang." His voice rumbled, shaking the outer hall and spreading far into the distance. Fang Hong and the others looked on from the side. They were envious and jealous. They hated that they were the ones who received the greetings from the disciples. Zhang Yan also stood up and returned the greetings with a smile. He was also deeply moved. After 3 years of hard work, he finally succeeded. From now on, his position in the Qinsang school was incomparable to that of the ordinary Yuanying Zhenren. It was perfectly justifiable for him to monopolize a mansion. If he could sit on this position for 360 years, he could enter the Hall of Duzhen and become an upper elder. Other than that, he could also choose a few good earth spirits from the spiritual mechanism courtyard to plant in his cave. He could also read the 5 techniques and 3 scriptures in the sutra courtyard. He could also choose one of the 12 supernatural powers to cultivate. The benefits were endless. Hearing the noise outside, Taoist Master Qin's expression became even worse. He said angrily, "Senior brother, the floating heavenly palace is an important place. How can you allow the disciples to make a ruckus?" Sect leader Qin smiled faintly but did not feel offended. He said, "Junior sister is too harsh." He then ignored her and turned to the servant boy beside him. "Go and summon Miao Kun to the palace." The servant hurriedly accepted the order. After a while, the fat Taoist with a funny face came to the hall again. Sect leader Qin looked at him several times and said warmly, "Come a little closer." Miao Kun hurriedly took a few steps forward. Sect leader Qin said, "Miao Kun, you followed my orders and hid in the Su clan for more than 20 years. You have worked hard and contributed greatly. Now that the Su clan has been eliminated, I will give you a place to start." At this point, he paused for a moment, then slowly said, "Today, I will accept you as a registered disciple. After you return to the sect, you will have no other cave abode. The Xinjin stream that Sui Hong used to live in will be given to you." Hearing this, Miao Kun was overjoyed. He hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed 3 times. He said, "Disciple will cultivate diligently and not let sect leader master down." The few spiritual masters looked at each other and shook their heads. Originally, they also wanted to get their hands on the Xinjin stream. They were just looking for a chance to speak up. However, sect leader Qin had accepted this person as a disciple and shut their mouths. No one could say anything about him taking over the Xinjin stream as a disciple of the sect leader. Sect leader Qin took the book that Qi Yuntian had presented just now and ordered the servant to pass it to the spiritual masters. The Su family's thousands of years of accumulation was no small matter. The cultivation items were innumerable. After the spiritual masters looked through it, they thought about it carefully. They knew that what was written in this book was definitely not the whole book, but only a small portion. Qi Yuntian definitely had another book in his hands. However, at the moment, the master and disciple line was in power, so they could only pretend that they did not know. After the spiritual masters looked through it, sect leader Qin passed down a decree to reward the disciples according to their contributions in this battle. Zhang Yan was now one of the top 10 disciples. He had also made a great contribution on this trip, so he also received a lot. In total, he received tens of thousands of medicinal pills, more than 30 magical treasures and instruments, 7 cave abodes and spiritual islands. Among them, there was 1 blessed land, 2 true palaces, 3 Qi residences, and a continent with hundreds of years of earth aura. Other than the disciples on this trip, the various houses also had their own gains. Even the aristocratic families received some benefits. However, compared to the master and disciple line, it paled in comparison. After the distribution was completed, a bell rang and a servant walked out of the hall, saying, "Sect leader's spiritual master has decreed that today's matters are over. There is no need for the disciples to wait, you may leave on your own." Zhang Yan got up and flew into the air. He wanted to say goodbye to Qi Yuntian, Ning Chongxian, and the others before leaving. Suddenly, he heard someone say from behind, "Senior brother Zhang, please wait." He turned around and saw Fang Hong chasing after him on a cloud. He said in surprise, "So it's junior brother Fang. Why am I here?" Fang Hong came up and greeted him. He said awkwardly, "Senior brother Zhang, I am looking for you because of the Ji Luo Golden Awl." Zhang Yan was surprised, "Senior brother, why do you say that? I have never seen this treasure." Seeing that Zhang Yan was deliberately making things difficult for him, Fang Hong cursed in his heart. He said angrily, "Just now, I used this treasure to injure Sui Hong. It was just that I was in a hurry to leave and it fell into this person's hands. This treasure was given to me by my master. I dare not throw it away. Now that this person thinks that senior brother has captured it, I hope that senior brother will return this treasure for the sake of us being in the same sect. I will be very grateful." Zhang Yan frowned. "Junior brother Fang, you are too careless. This treasure was given to you by our master. How can you lose it so easily?" Fang Hong was taught a lesson for no reason. Even though he felt wronged, he could not do anything about it. Zhang Yan was now one of the top 10 disciples. Other than the sect leader and a few Dong Tianjinren, there was no need to pay special attention to anyone else. He could only respectfully call him Senior Brother Zhang. In order to get back this treasure, he had to compromise. He said in a low voice, "Senior brother is right. I have been careless. I hope senior brother can help me." Zhang Yan said lightly, "I have never seen this treasure. If it is really with Sui Hong, it must be in the sleeve. When I go back, I will refine the sleeve. If I see this treasure, I will return it to you." Fang Hong was helpless. He could only say, then I hope senior brother will be careful. I will definitely repay you." Chapter 350. As soon as the Merit Court's law ranking came out, the names of the top 10 disciples were listed. Among them, Zhang Yan's name was the most eye-catching. In the past thousands of years, he was the only cultivator who was not a disciple of Dong Tianjinren but was able to enter this ranking. Zhang Yan's appearance couldn't help but cause the thoughts of the junior disciples in the sect to run wild, and they faintly saw a trace of possibility. If they cultivated diligently and bitterly, then would they be able to enter the rankings one day like senior brother Zhang? Even among the aristocratic families, some of the disciples seemed to have seen a bright path. Zhang Yan's identity not only did not cause people to look down on him, but instead caused people to feel deep veneration. This news spread outside the mountain gate in a few days, and even the other large sects heard about it. In the Yaoview building of the Beichin sect, a handsome young man was moving his Dan Sha and training his qi. This was the head of the Beichin sect, Jiang Lin. After an hour, he slowly stopped and walked out of the hall. At this moment, he suddenly heard a boy outside the door reporting, "Jinren sect leader, Elder Yan wants to see you. He has been waiting outside for a long time." Sect leader Jiang was startled and said hurriedly, "Quickly invite him in." "No, I'll go greet him personally." The only Yuanying Jinren in the sect was here, so he didn't dare to be arrogant. He tidied his clothes and came out to greet him, smiling. "So it's Martial Uncle Yan." He took a closer look and said in surprise, "Martial Uncle, you look so happy today. Could it be that you have something good to tell me?" Jiang Lin was a humorous person and didn't usually put on airs as the head of the sect. The Beichin sect didn't pay attention to etiquette and rules like the other major sects, so he was very casual when he talked and laughed. Elder Yan bowed with a smile. After the two of them sat down, he stroked his beard and said, "I was about to report to the head of the sect. Does the head of the sect remember the Qinsang school disciple Zhang Yan who came that day?" Jiang Lin's expression changed slightly and he said with a smile, "How can I not remember? It's just that when he came the last time, I was busy and wasn't in the mountain gate, so I missed him. It's a pity that the elder mentioned a joyous occasion. Is it related to him?" Although he said it politely, he actually didn't think much of it. Although Qinsang school was a big sect, an ordinary inherited disciple, who was not even a direct disciple of the heaven's abode, was not worthy of his attention. No matter what, he was still a sect leader. On that day, Elder Yan, the Yuanying spiritual master, had already given him a lot of face. Why would he need to personally welcome them? With a smile on his face, Elder Yan replied, replying to sect leader, "This old man just now received news that Zhang Yan is now one of the top 10 inner disciples of Qinsang school." At first, Jiang Lin did not pay too much attention to it. He was about to take the tea and drink it, but after hearing it, he could not help but be moved. He suddenly stood up and said, "Is this true?" Elder Yen also stood up and said, "There is no mistake." Jiang Lin slowly put down the teacup and paced back and forth in the room with his hands clasped behind his back. There was a contemplative look on his face. What did it mean to be one of the top 10 inner disciples of Qinsang school? He also knew that as long as he could sit firmly in this position, he would definitely become an elder in the Hall of Crossing Truth in the future. His status would be respected and his words would have a lot of weight. If he was slightly biased towards Beichen faction, the benefits would naturally be great. It was just that he did not know Zhang Yan well after all. Everything he knew came from Elder Yan, so he could not help but be a little hesitant. After all, Zhang Yan was not a disciple of the Heaven's Abode's spiritual master. His foundation was not solid. What if after Beichen faction paid a lot, he was pushed down from his seat? That was just a small matter. If he got involved, he would be implicated. If he angered one of the forces in Qinsang school, Beichen faction was just a small sect after all. They could not afford to be angry. As a sect leader, he had to think twice for his disciples. Elder Yen also knew the sect leader's concerns. Because he did not interrupt Jiang Lin's thoughts, he just sat quietly at the side. After about 10 minutes, Jiang Lin turned around and cupped his hands. He said apologetically, "Elder Yen, sorry for the wait." Elder Yen said seriously, "What are you talking about, sect leader? This matter is of great importance. You should think carefully." Jiang Lin returned to his seat with a determined look on his face. He said in a low voice, "I have decided to send someone to congratulate them." "Elder Yen, what do you think we should send?" After some careful consideration, he felt that it was a good bet. This did not mean that he had full confidence in Zhang Yan, but he believed in Elder Yan's judgment. Elder Yan had always been farsighted. He did things boldly but cautiously. He was far beyond Jiang Lin's reach. If he did not have to focus on cultivation, the position of sect leader would have been taken by Elder Yan. Elder Yan was familiar with Jiang Lin's temperament. When he came here, he had some confidence. Now that the sect leader had agreed, although it was not unexpected, he was happy. He thought about it and said, "I have already interacted with Zhang Yan a few times, so it will not be too abrupt. However, now that he is one of the top 10 disciples of Qinsang school, the gift cannot be too shabby. We need to give him something strong. In my opinion, why not give him some of that pot of Penglai Qi?" Jiang Lin could not help but be shocked. Elder Yan, this was left behind by the founder. Even among the 10 sects of Xianmen, it may not be possible to have it. Do you really want to give it to him? Jiang Lin could not help but be shocked. Elder Yan, this item was left behind by the founder of the North Star sect. Even the 10 sects of Xianmen don't have it. Do you really want to give it to him? If one took a breath when breaking through to the next realm, one would be able to comprehend its mysteries and have a higher chance of success. It could be said that Elder Yan was able to break through the Yuanying realm thanks to this item. However, this item was limited and extremely precious. Within 100 years, it could only be used by the elders and the sect leader. The other disciples had never even heard of it. Elder Yan Daoren said, "I have already made it clear to my Dalong. The breath of Penglai Qi that was left for him will be given to fellow Zhang." Jiang Lin stared at Elder Yan for a while and said seriously, "Elder Yan is right. Without this item, this person cannot be moved." He stood up and pressed down on Elder Yan, who was about to get up. He said, "Elder Yan, please wait for a moment. I will be right back." He turned into the inner room and came out after a while. He carefully placed a golden pot on the table and said, "Along with my 3 breaths of Penglai Qi and my brother's breath, I will give it to Elder Yan as well." Elder Yan was moved. "Sect leader. You are about to break through. If you lose 3 breaths of immortal Qi, won't you lose a lot of chances?" Jiang Lin laughed. "Since Elder Yan is willing to give it to me, as the sect leader, what can I not do? I have seen everything that you have done for the sect Zen. Even though I am of little ability and virtue, but as a disciple of a sect, we should advance and retreat together. Elder Yen sighed. Sect leader is magnanimous. Why worry that our sect will not prosper? Jiang Lin had put in a lot of effort this time. Apart from the breath of Penglai Qi that Elder Yen had already used, he took out the remaining 5 breaths of immortal Qi. If he wanted to obtain more, he would have to wait for another 30 years to the next 100 years. It was equivalent to delaying the day that he was confident of breaking through by many days. But from Elder Yan's point of view, it was worth it. Once a disciple of the Qinsang school became one of the top 10 disciples, there would definitely be countless people who would come to join them. Moreover, Zhang Yan had the Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake in his hands. He also had the support of the Dongtianjinren. In less than 100 years, he would be able to form a huge force with him as the leader. No one could underestimate him. He stood up and said, I will go prepare now. I will head to the Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake in a few days. Huanjin Temple. In the Qiwu Mountain. After Zhao Hozhou and Shi Yutang received the news, they were also very surprised. Zhao Hozhou said solemnly, I heard that Daoist Zhang became one of the top 10 disciples. It is reasonable for us to go congratulate him. Shi Yutang's eyes lit up. She agreed, senior martial brother is right. That day, Daoist Zhang helped us to make the life-protecting banner, allowing us to enter the celestial abode and obtain the secret technique. However, when we went back to visit Daoist Zhang, he happened to be in seclusion, so we didn't get to see him. It is very regretful. These few years, our cultivation has improved greatly, and it is all thanks to Daoist Zhang. How can we not go to such a joyous event? Shaoqing Sect, Sprint Thunder Hall. Cho Kun looked at the flying sword in his hand and felt very emotional. He thought to himself, that day, I parted with Daoist Zhang at the Flying Boat Celestial Market. It has been more than 20 years since then. Back then, he was still at the Mystic Light Realm. Now, I have already stepped into the core transformation realm. I thought that when we met again, I would definitely be able to win. I didn't expect that he has already become one of the top 10 disciples of the Qinsang school. He is one step ahead of me. He thought for a long time and shouted, come in. A servant walked in and knelt on the ground. He said, this lowly one is here. Master, if there is anything, please tell me. Cho Kun instructed, prepare a generous gift for me. Remember not to be stingy. I will personally pay a visit to the Qinsang school in the near future. Ancient Dingyang County, present-day southern Liang Country's Qi Prefecture. Zhou Zishang's expression was gloomy. He shook the letter in his hand and said to a young cultivator, Junior brother, is this rumor true? The young cultivator said respectfully, Senior brother, Junior brother doesn't dare to lie. Zhou Zishang shook the letter, and it instantly shattered into countless pieces. He said hatefully, that day, I made a mistake, but I didn't want him to turn things around. Today, he is already too powerful to be controlled. Back then, he gave Zhang Yan a mystic origin internal meditation record to destroy his foundation. He even boasted in front of his servants that he would leave the mountain obediently. However, the news he received was that Zhang Yan became famous at the Eroding Word Conference and became a lower house disciple of the Qinsang school. This caused him to lose a lot of face, and he had to return to the sect. He was even scolded by the elders of his family for this. Right now, he was only at the second level of the Mystic Light Realm, but this Zhang Yan had already formed a Grade 1 core and became one of the top 10 disciples of the Qinsang school. Whether it was in terms of cultivation or status, he was far above him. While he was shocked, he also felt a trace of fear and annoyance. The young cultivator looked at his expression and said carefully, Senior brother, do you want to tell senior sister? Zhou Zishang furrowed his eyebrows and waved his hand. No need. She is cultivating in the South Sea right now, and it would be bad to tell her. It's fine as long as I know. None of you need to say anything, or else don't blame me for being merciless. The young cultivator then said in a low voice, I'm just afraid that someone will talk too much. Zhou Zishang harumphed and said, if Big Sis doesn't succeed in her cultivation, she won't return. From what I can see, we probably won't be able to see her for the next few decades. If you don't say anything, who else will know? The Jade Sky sect was a large profound sect that wasn't inferior to the Dark Azure sect. Moreover, one was in the south while the other was in the north. Normally, they would have very little interaction with each other. Even though this piece of news was currently attracting the attention of others, but after a period of time, it would gradually be forgotten and no one would mention it again. Chapter 351. After staying outside for 2 days, Zhang Yan returned to Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake. As soon as he entered the mansion, he saw Lu Yenny, Tian Kuan, the Wang sisters, and a group of people from Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake to congratulate him. His teacher had become one of the top 10 disciples of Qinsang school. Now, his disciples could call themselves the disciples of Zhaoyu. It seemed that the Wang sisters were only happy for Zhang Yan's promotion in the sect, but Lu Yenny was secretly impressed. She knew how difficult it was for her teacher to climb to this position. She didn't know how much hard work he had gone through and how many schemes he had used just now to achieve what he had today. Luo Xiao walked up with a smile and handed over a list of gifts. She said, Master, just now you returned to the mansion and there are already many people coming to send gifts. These top 10 disciples are really good. I am also envious of them. Zhang Yan shook his head and smiled. He took the list of gifts and glanced at the name list. He saw the names of Xie Zongyuan, Feng Ming, Qin Nan, and the others. There was also the 100 ships of true sand sent by Jinren Peng. In addition, there were many name cards from disciples who wanted to meet him. How could he not know that these disciples wanted to come to him? Although he wanted to expand the number of disciples in the future, it was not a good time now. He was still thinking about how to break through the shell. Therefore, he ordered Shang Chang to reject all of them. After that, Zhang Yan dismissed all the disciples, leaving only Luo Xiao behind. He smiled and said, Fellow Taoist Luo, you've been with me for a long time. I've been thinking about finding a good cultivation method for fellow Taoist Luo to cultivate, but I've been delayed by many things, so I couldn't do it. Now that I'm one of the top 10 disciples, I can browse through the thousands of Tao books in Sift Courtyard, so it shouldn't be difficult for me to find a cultivation method for fellow Taoist unification. When Luo Xiao heard this, she hurriedly bowed and said joyfully, Master is considerate, this servant will thank you first. After Zhang Yan talked with Luo Xiao for a while, he returned to the 12 palaces. The mirror spirit had been waiting for a long time. When she saw him, she bowed and said, Congratulations, Master. Congratulations, Master. Zhang Yan laughed and said, You don't have to do the same. The mirror spirit was very smooth, but she was not embarrassed at all. Instead, she smiled apologetically. Who wouldn't like to listen to flattery? This was especially true for a magical treasure like him. He didn't have to worry about betraying his master, so he was even more fearless. After Zhang Yan sat down, he took a step forward. Master, Xiao Yi has already seized that Xiao Ku's body. I wonder if Master wishes to see him. Zhang Yan, on the other hand, was slightly astonished. He also knew how difficult possession was. That day, he had not managed to subdue Xiao Chua's primordial spirit, yet this Xiao Yi was actually able to succeed in possession. He was indeed extraordinary. After thinking for a moment, he said, Very well, I can call him over to see me. Mirror Spirit got the order. He activated the formation and sent Xiao Yi in. Xiao Yi landed on the ground. He didn't look left or right. After seeing Zhang Yan, he immediately went forward and kowtowed, saying, Benefactor, please accept this lowly one's bow. He respectfully kowtowed. Zhang Yan sat on the jade couch and accepted his bow, saying, Stand up and talk. Xiao Yi said, Yes. He didn't hesitate to stand up. Zhang Yan saw that his face was slightly pale. That was because his vitality had been greatly damaged after the possession. It was also because his body was weak. If he didn't recuperate when he went back and damaged his Tao foundation, then all this effort would have been in vain. However, since this person could do this, he didn't mind giving him another push. He didn't mind giving her another push and said, that day at the grand competition, senior brother Xiao Sha wanted to take you back, and I agreed. However, with your current condition, I'm afraid your reputation won't be very good. Why don't you stay in my mansion for a few days to recuperate? It won't be too late to return after you've recovered. Xiao Yi revealed a look of gratitude and knelt down again, saying, this lowly one will remember benefactor's gift. In the future, if you have any orders, even if I have to die, I won't dare to refuse. Zhang Yan nodded slightly and glanced at the mirror spirit. The latter understood and turned the formation door, sending him out. Zhang Yan's eyes flickered and he instructed the mirror spirit, don't be stingy with the elixir. I have underestimated him before. Not only is this person persevering, but he is also flexible. It's not something an ordinary person can do. He will be of great use in the future. The mirror spirit immediately understood and bowed, saying, Master, don't worry. This lowly one will take good care of him. Zhang Yan made an "oh" sound and took out a piece of beautiful jade from his sleeve, saying, Fellow Su, have you seen that person just now? Su Yang came out from the beautiful jade and showed his figure. He said with envy, Master, this lowly one saw clearly. This person must have succeeded in taking over the body. He patted his chest again and said confidently, this lowly one is different from him. If Master gives this lowly one a physical body, I have a 90% chance of winning. Zhang Yan knew that he wasn't lying. Su Yang had the body of a true demon now and didn't need to rely on his physical body to cultivate. Taking over a body was easy for him. However, he shook his head and smiled. Although your big brother's body is in my hands, your cultivation isn't high enough. If you take it now, most of this body will be destroyed. The gains won't make up for the losses. Su Yang sighed and said, Sigh, Master is right. Sui Hong was born from the same mother, so the body was the most compatible with him. It was many times closer than the other Su family members. As long as he could take over the body, if he was lucky, he would be able to inherit most of the inheritance. However, his cultivation was indeed not high enough. According to his current cultivation, he was only a mystic light realm cultivator. He still needed to improve a bit before he could completely take over this body. Otherwise, it would be a waste of his cultivation. Zhang Yan tapped the beautiful jade with his finger and said, I want to let you go out and cultivate for a few more years. Are you willing? Su Yang was also very smart and asked carefully, what does Master want this lowly one to do? Zhang Yan raised his head, and his gaze seemed to look into the distance. After a while, he slowly said, You have the body of a demon, so don't wander around the territories of the 10 sections. Go to the territory of the demon sect. If possible, go and find a master to seek the Tao and gather information. If the demon sect has any movements, tell me through a split soul. The Donghua continent's 1,000-year demon tribulation was about to begin. Although he had come into contact with the people of the demon sect before, the Six Paths demon sect had been dormant for a long time, so he didn't know how strong they were. Since he was one of the top 10 disciples of the Qinsang school, he would have to face the people of the demon sect sooner or later. At that time, if he still knew nothing about the demon sect, this was not something he wanted to see. Thus, he decided to plan ahead and secretly put a chess piece in. He wanted to know himself and the enemy so that he could deal with them in the future. Su Yang quickly calculated in his heart, and with a quick thought, he felt that going to the devil sect's territory was the best choice. He had cultivated the source-seeking scripture for more than 20 years. Now that he had the body of a true demon, he only needed to carefully find a physical body and go and find a master. Thus, he quickly said, How can this lowly one not follow master's orders? I'm willing to go, I'm willing to go. Zhang Yan nodded and said, Okay, I'll give you a treasure. When you use it, Not only can it fly out to attack the enemy, but it can also fly and block the light of the sun and moon. He took out an item and pointed at it. A treasure light flew into Sui Hong's body and disappeared. This was one of the spiritual weapons left by Guo Zongyao. It was called Sincerity Flying Illusion Shuttle. This item was strange and invisible, and it was refined by a ray of light. With the help of this item, Sui Yang could fly around without any worries even in the daytime. Sui Yang used it a little and felt that this item could change as he wished. He couldn't help but be overjoyed and bowed. "Thank you for the treasure, Master." When the two were talking, the mirror spirit had been silent like a statue. At this moment, her expression suddenly changed, and she said, "Master, there is a female cultivator visiting outside. She claims to be from Qi Yuntian's sect, Qi Mengjiao. She is ordered to come and pay a visit." Zhang Yan pondered in his heart. Qi Mengjiao must have come under Qi Yuntian's order to go out and pay a visit. Thus, he said, "Order Yenny to accompany her first, I'll go see her later." Zhang Yan gave a few more instructions. After making arrangements for Sui Yang, he crossed the formation door and entered the main hall. Lu Yenny and Qi Mengjiao were chatting happily. When they saw Zhang Yan coming out, the two girls quickly got up to greet him. Qi Mengjiao went forward and bowed, and said, "Martial nephew Qi Mengjiao greets martial uncle Zhang." Zhang Yan smiled and nodded. "Martial nephew Qi doesn't need to stand on ceremony, sit." After Qi Mengjiao got up, she went to sit on the seat. Although she had seen Zhang Yan before, she couldn't help but look at him a few more times. That day, she wasn't optimistic about Zhang Yan, but the result was beyond her expectations. After the surprise, she felt a heartfelt admiration. That day in the merit courtyard, the two of them didn't have a deep conversation. At this moment, Zhang Yan exchanged a few words with her. He found that this girl's thoughts were clear and her words were clear. He thought to himself, no wonder Qi Shixiang put this girl in charge of the merit courtyard's affairs. She's really making the best use of her talent. After a long time, Qi Mengjiao just now came to the main topic. "Today, martial nephew is under my master's order. There are 3 matters." Zhang Yan's expression turned serious. "Martial nephew, please speak." Qi Mengjiao took out a jade box and passed it over. She smiled lightly and said, "The first matter is that my master ordered me to lend this treasure to martial uncle for 24 years. This item has an extraordinary effect. It can help martial uncle break through the door earlier." That day, martial uncle Ning also relied on this item. Just now, he has successfully stepped through the door. Zhang Yan was never one to refuse a gift. He didn't look at it too much and accepted it graciously. He said, "Then what about the second matter?" Qi Mengjiao saw that after receiving the treasure, he still had a calm and unrestrained look. There wasn't the slightest bit of surprise on his face. She couldn't help but praise him in her heart. She cleared her throat and said, "The second matter is that I have to inform martial uncle. Just last night, Hu Xian achieved yuanying." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows. Countless thoughts went through his mind. Just now, not long after Qi Yuntian stepped down, Hu Xian achieved yuanying. It was clearly a plot by the aristocratic families to target the master and disciple. This was interesting. No wonder Qi Yuntian lent the treasure to him. Firstly, he wanted to build a good relationship with him. Secondly, he wanted to improve his strength as much as possible to reverse the disadvantage. In fact, this was not the main reason. On the contrary, when he fought to a draw with Du De and Xiao Sha, Qi Yuntian felt that his potential was endless. If he could break through the door before the next competition, his strength would improve greatly. He might even be able to enter the top ranks. With this in mind, he took out the treasure and lent it to him. Qi Mengjiao said, "There is one last matter, which is the most important. All the top 10 disciples should have a position in the sect. Martial Uncle Zhang is no exception. Now, Master has arranged it for Martial Uncle." Zhang Yan asked curiously, "Oh, what is my position?" Qinsung School had 9 courtyards. They were the Merit Courtyard, Zhengqing Courtyard, Shangming Courtyard, Danding Courtyard, Jingluo Courtyard, Baoyang Courtyard, Lingji Courtyard, Fangchen Courtyard, and Ziguang Courtyard. Among them, the Merit Courtyard, Zhengqing Courtyard, and Shangming Courtyard were controlled by master and disciple. As for the Danding Courtyard, Zhou Chengju's daily actions were still impartial. Jingluo Courtyard and Ziguang Courtyard were under the control of the elders of the Duzhen Hall. No one could interfere. As for the Baoyang Courtyard, the Lingji Courtyard, and the Fangchen Courtyard, they were in the hands of the aristocratic families. Zhang Yan guessed that the place he was most likely going to was the Danding Courtyard. Qi Mengjiao pursed her lips and smiled. She took out a decree and handed it to Zhang Yan. She said, "Martial uncle, please take a look." Zhang Yan took the decree and opened it to take a look. However, the result was unexpected. His official position was not one of the 9 courtyards. Instead, he had another place to go. He asked doubtfully, "Lower courtyard?" Qi Mengjiao's beautiful eyes looked deeply at him. She said, "Yes. From today onwards, Martial Uncle Zhang is the master of the 3 views of the lower courtyard of Qinsang School and the pavilion master of the Leaping Heavens Pavilion. From now on, whoever becomes a true disciple or enters the upper courtyard must be stamped by Martial Uncle Zhang. Otherwise, no one will be accepted." Chapter 352. With his hands behind his back, Zhang Yan stood at the top of the rippling cloud peak and looked at the beautiful scenery of Kanggu Mountain's 18 peaks. In the past, he had defeated the Guangyuan sect's disciples at this peak and obtained the identity of a true disciple, which allowed him to enter the upper house. Only now could he have his future achievements. In the blink of an eye, 26 years had passed. Today, he had returned. "Greetings, Chancellor Zhang." 3 white-haired Doran's disciples came to his back and bowed deeply. Zhang Yan slowly turned around and looked at the 3 of them. As he looked at them, the 3 of them could not help but lower their heads. He waved his hand and said, "You may dispense with the formalities." Only then did the 3 old Taoists dare to stand up straight. Now that Zhang Yan was one of the top 10 disciples of Qinsang School, he had a high status in the school. Now that he was the lower house's 3 views master and the Leaping Sky Pavilion master, he could decide their life and death with a single word. Because of this, they were extremely humble and did not dare to be disrespectful. Among the 3 Dorans, Zhang Yan recognized 2 of them. One was the Calm Peace Temple's Zhenshozhong, the other was the Virtue Temple's Hishouxuan, and the last one was a white-haired Daoran who looked about 50 years old. Zhang Yan did not know this person, so he could not help but ask, "May I know where Keeper Shi is now?" The old Taoist hurriedly came out and cupped his hands, reporting to the headmaster, "Senior brother Shi is getting on in years. 12 years ago, he resigned from his position and returned to his hometown. I heard that he passed away a few years ago, and now I am in charge of the Good Abyss Monastery." He sighed endlessly as he spoke. Zhang Yan nodded slightly and said politely, "How should I address you, Keeper?" The Taoist hurriedly said, "I don't deserve to be called Chancellor. I am Ma Shouxiang." Zhang Yan said indifferently, "I will give you an hour to gather all the disciples of the lower house in front of the High Swamp Temple. No mistakes are allowed." Ma Shouxiang was in a bit of a dilemma. The disciples of the lower house were all from the aristocratic families and usually did not listen to their orders. If they wanted to summon them, there might not be many who would come. However, he was well aware of Zhang Yan's identity and how powerful he was. He didn't dare to disobey and immediately said, "Yes. I'll do it right away." The 3 of them hurriedly turned around and left. Not long after, a loud bell rang from the 18 peaks of the Azure Parasol Mountain. Although Zhang Yan had been appointed as the lower house's chancellor, the aristocratic families had not received any news before he came here. Perhaps others might not have noticed this detail, but what kind of person was Zhang Yan? With just a moment's consideration, he could tell that there was a big deal behind this. Therefore, he made a prompt decision and chose 12 strong men from the cave and rushed here without stopping. The Azure Wu Mountain's middle and lower house disciples were doing their homework when they suddenly heard the bell. They were surprised and did not rush over. Instead, he sent his servants to gather information. After receiving the report, they just now knew that there was a new temple master in the upper house, which was why the disciples were gathered. When they heard that the upper house had sent a chancellor over, they felt that it was a little unusual. However, they did not pay too much attention to it and slowly walked up the cloud-rippling peak. Only the cautious disciples had arrived early just now. Zhang Yan sat on the stone platform at the peak. The 3 chancellors sat below him, and there were 12 strong men who were over 3 meters tall on his left and right. These disciples did not have the qualifications to observe the sex competition. Naturally, they did not recognize Zhang Yan. However, after looking at him, they felt that something was wrong. His aura was grand and imposing, and it actually gave them an extremely heavy pressure. For a moment, their hearts trembled and they stood below him obediently. The lower house had never had a cultivator with such a high cultivation. Even the 3 chancellors were only at the first level of clear qi. All the disciples were secretly shocked and thought, what cultivation is this person? Could he be a mystic light realm cultivator? However, they did not expect that the master and disciple faction would actually send one of the top 10 disciples, Zhang Yan, here. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. Zhang Yan said in a deep voice, Ma Shouxiang. Ma Shouxiang immediately stood up and said, yes, Chancellor. What orders do you have? How many people have arrived? Ma Shouxiang's expression was solemn. He opened the name list and checked it. He bowed and said, Chancellor, there were a total of 36 disciples from the 3 courtyards. Only 27 people have arrived. Zhang Yan's expression did not change. Ma Shouxiang carefully looked at his expression and said, Chancellor, should I send someone to hurry? Zhang Yan said indifferently, no need. Wait for another hour. Ma Shouxiang nodded and retreated to the side. When those disciples saw that Zhang Yan's cultivation was deep, they originally thought that he would reprimand those who had yet to arrive, so they were slightly nervous. However, seeing that he did not seem to be angry and did not seem to dare to do anything to them, they relaxed and couldn't help but whisper among themselves. Some disciples even grumbled, I already said that there was no need to come so early. We wasted 2 hours for nothing. If we have the time, we might as well go admire the moon and flowers. The disciple who was scolded by him was also helpless and said, Junior apprentice brother, it is better to be safe than sorry. Just bear with it. It seems that the new chancellor's cultivation is also very high. He is not a simple person. Another disciple said in disdain, him? Do you think a mere chancellor dares to touch the disciples of the 12 great families? Senior apprentice brother Xia, you are too careful. Zhang Yan didn't pay any attention to their conversation. Another 2 hours passed, and the remaining 9 disciples still had not arrived. Ma Shouxiang came up and said, Chancellor, the time has come. Zhang Yan's expression suddenly became solemn and he said coldly, as the Chancellor, I have summoned all the disciples of the lower house, but they actually did not come. Where are the rules of the sect? Ma Shouxiang, strike off the names of these 9 people and expel them from the lower house. Those who dare to enter the lower house without my orders will be executed. Hearing this, Ma Shouxiang immediately became spirited and said, Yes, I will obey the Chancellor's orders. He rolled up his sleeves and picked up a brush. With a few strokes, he struck off the names of these 9 people from the list. The 20 or so disciples below were thrown into an uproar, their faces filled with shock. Seeing that Zhang Yan was serious, some of the people who were on good terms with the 9 disciples panicked. They signaled to the servants in the distance with their eyes, and those servants understood and hurried out to report the situation. Zhang Yan saw it clearly. He did not say anything to stop them. Instead, he smiled coldly and looked around before saying loudly, 100 years ago, the lower house would only take in 3 direct disciples every 8 years. Even in 80 years, there would only be 30. But now, in the past 100 years, the number of direct disciples has increased by 10 times, resulting in a mix of good and bad, making it difficult to distinguish between the good and the bad. Since I am here, I will eliminate the weak and retain the strong. You all must remember this. Just as he finished speaking, he heard someone in the air say, "The new monastery head is really bold." All the disciples looked up to see 9 disciples coming over on a flying boat. The person at the front wore a high hat and a wide belt. He had the spirit of a disciple from a large clan. The flying boat stopped on the mountain peak and the disciple at the front got off and walked over. When he walked over, the disciples on the left and right all moved aside, greeting him, "Senior Apprentice Brother Han." This person stood in front of Zhang Yan and seriously looked at Zhang Yan. At first, he was on guard, but then he seemed to think of something and relaxed. He cupped his hands and said, "Chancellor, we are here. I'm not begging you to take back your order. I'm just here to tell you that if you expel us from the lower house today, we can return tomorrow. However, at that time, you might not be able to keep your position as monastery head." He was a disciple of the Han clan. When he heard that the new chancellor had summoned him, he did not take it seriously at all. He had never thought that the new chancellor would openly expel him from the lower house. However, he had the support of the Han clan, so he was not afraid. At worst, he could just ask the elders of the clan to come forward. But if he left with his tail between his legs and did not respond, he would return to the lower house in the future. How would he have the face to stay here? That was why he had come over to say such a thing. After saying this, he turned to leave. Zhang Yan's gaze swept over him and he coldly said, "You do not bow to your master, speak arrogant words, have no respect for your elders, and have openly broken the rules. Arrest and behead them." Senior Apprentice Brother Han was clearly a bit shocked. He had originally thought that the other was just trying to scare him, but then he saw that the 2 Whaley warriors had come up and were really going to make a move. He was shocked and angry at the same time and loudly shouted, "You dare!" The 2 warriors expressionlessly picked him up and pressed him to the ground. Just now, he felt fear and loudly shouted, "You dare to kill me, I am Han." Before he could finish, the blade in the warrior's hand fell, and with a crack, his head was cut off. Blood flowed all over the ground. This scene immediately caused the minds of the disciples below to go blank. Their faces were deathly pale, not knowing how to react. Even Ma Shouxiang was startled. He had originally thought that perhaps Zhang Yan was just going to punish them, but he had never imagined that he would really kill them. Zhang Yan's gaze swept over them, causing the remaining 8 to feel a chill in their hearts. They all trembled in fear. He indifferently said, "Kill those 8 as well." Those 8 disciples were so scared that their souls almost left their bodies. They knew that the other party was serious, so they immediately knelt down and cried out, "Monastery head, spare us." The warriors did not care about what they said. They all came up and grabbed each one, pressing them to the ground. Without any hesitation, their blades fell down. With the sound of flesh being cut and bones being cut, 8 heads immediately rolled to the ground, filling the entire area with the stench of blood. Zhang Yan straightened his sleeves and indifferently said to himself, "With a few fewer people, my field of vision has expanded quite a bit. It's just that there are still too many disciples from the lower house." His words, which were filled with killing intent, caused the lower house disciples to feel a chill down their spines. For a moment, they were all silent, trembling with fear. They did not even dare to breathe too loudly. Even the 3 leaders were trembling. If he killed so many disciples from the aristocratic families at once, what would they do if the aristocratic families pursued the matter? While they were worried, Zhang Yan was calm and composed, not worried in the slightest. The sect leader had sent him here to choke the necks of the aristocratic families. It was like tying a rope around their necks so that they would obediently submit. To deal with these lower house disciples, there was no need for him to play any tricks. As one of the top 10 disciples of the sect, he could use his power to suppress others. If they did not follow his rules, then he would behead them with a single sword strike. Then he would see who would dare to challenge him. As for the retaliation of the aristocratic families, no matter how great the pressure was, the sect leader would hold it off for him. He would not let him step down immediately after arriving, so he could do whatever he wanted. Zhang Yan looked down and calmly said, "My name is Zhang Yan. Under the orders of the sect leader, I am the leader of the lower house. From now on, whatever I say goes. All you need to do is listen. If you disobey, don't blame my sword for being merciless." Zhang Yan. When the disciples of the lower house heard this name, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. This was someone who had formed a first-grade Dan, one of the top 10 disciples of the sect. After the shock, they all complained incessantly in their hearts. How could they have known that the sect would send such a great deity here? At that moment, they felt that Senior Han and the others had really died unjustly. Chapter 353. P.S. Tomorrow at midnight. After Zhang Yan killed 9 people in a row, he immediately set down several strict rules. The slightest carelessness would result in expulsion from the lower house. The 3 outlooks of the Azure Parasol Mountain were in a state of chaos. It should be known that Zhang Yan was not only the head of the 3 Outlooks Academy, but he was also the pavilion master of the Leaping Heavens Pavilion. Not only was he in charge of the bestowment, but he also had the final say on what kind of abode one would be bestowed if one managed to open one's meridian in the lower house. It could be said that he controlled the path of advancement of the direct disciples from top to bottom, forcing them to obediently listen to him. When the clans received the news, it was already a day later. Just as they were still hesitating, Zhang Yan made another move. 20 years ago, when he was in the lower house, there were only 28 disciples. Later on, including him, there were only 29. Even so, the bestowment from the school was still insufficient. Now that the 3 pools Lake Demon had been eliminated, the bestowment was more generous, expanding to 36 people. Now that he had eliminated 9 people, he had to make up for them. On that day, Zhang Yan wrote a letter to Qimengjiao. The latter naturally understood and sent 4 disciples over without batting an eyelid. The 4 were chosen from the 9 cities. All of them had outstanding aptitudes, and their eyes were like peach blossoms. Zhang Yan did not ask who their master was. He arranged for the Wang sisters to enter the lower house with them, and they were also listed as direct disciples. Not only that, but he also spread the word that the disciples of the clans, and the Thousand Frost chart were allowed to cultivate in the lower house. These small clans could not be compared to the 5 great clans and the 12 great houses, especially the 3000 Frost chart. They were all disciples from declining clans. If they did not have a rare opportunity, they would not have a chance to stand out. In the past, the spots for the lower house disciples were all taken by the 17 clans, and there was no place for them at all. However, Zhang Yan had set a precedent. After hearing the news, many disciples from small clans were shocked at first, but then they became restless. Everyone could tell that the revival of the master and disciple line was imminent, and the general trend was already unstoppable. Since he was willing to give them this chance, why would they refuse? Now that Zhang Yan was in charge, who would dare to make such a move? If someone else was in charge of the academy, who could guarantee that they would have the courage to do so? Therefore, even though many people were worried about the reaction of the great clans and were still watching, there were indeed some bold people who ran over. Zhang Yan picked and chose, and added 3 more people. One of them was from a prestigious family, and the other 2 were from humble backgrounds. Soon, the quota of 36 disciples was filled. This action was like a thorn stuck in the throats of the 5 great clans and the 12 great chambers. They couldn't swallow it, and they couldn't spit it out either. After some discussion, they pretended that nothing had happened and left the matter unsettled. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Zhang Yan was inspecting a disciple's homework. He was examining his attainments in etched runes. With just a few questions, the disciple's back was drenched in sweat and his face was pale. Suddenly, he sensed something and looked outside. He raised his sleeves and waved. The disciple felt as if he had been pardoned and quickly retreated. Zhang Yan got up and walked out of the hall. When he arrived in front of the temple, he saw a gray-robed Taoist with deep eyes and thin cheeks standing there. He was looking at the greenery on the mountain. His expression changed, and he calmly walked forward and cupped his hands. So it's Senior Brother Hua. I apologize for not going out to greet you. Hua Xian turned around and smiled amiably. He returned the greeting. Junior Brother Zhang, you're too polite. Zhang Yan saw that Hua Xian's eyes were filled with countless emotions, but it gave off an extremely lonely and vast feeling. He found it quite strange. During the competition that day, Hua Xian didn't give off such a feeling. Thinking about it, Hua Xian thought that it was because Hua Xian's cultivation had improved after breaking through the Yuanying realm. Hua Xian tilted his head and looked down the mountain. He sighed. I haven't been here for more than 200 years, but the scenery on the mountain is still the same. I can't help but think of you. Junior Brother Zhang, I'm also from the Han book, and I know that it's not easy for these disciples to cultivate. You've given them a way out, and I'm very gratified. Zhang Yan smiled faintly. If Senior Brother Hua says that, then someone must be dissatisfied. Hua Xian smiled. His voice turned deep as he said, that wife of mine wanted me to suppress you after hearing about your deeds in the lower house. It's laughable. How could a mediocre person like her understand the thoughts in my heart? Zhang Yan heard that Hua Xian wasn't polite to his cultivation companion. When he said the words, beloved wife, his tone was also cold. Even though Hua Xian was the leader of the 10 great disciples and had cultivated the Yuanying realm today, he'd married into the Chen clan with the identity of Han Book in the end, so his status in the clan was probably not high. At this moment, a clear and long cry of a goose suddenly sounded out from the sky, and both of them couldn't help but raise their heads to look over. Hua Xian watched for a while before he suddenly sighed. Junior Brother Zhang, the Grand Tao is difficult to seek. Even if I enter the Yuanying realm, I'll only be able to enjoy a lifespan of 1,000 years. I don't feel any joy from entering this realm, and I feel like I'm walking on thin ice instead. The devil tribulation comes first among the 3 great tribulations, and the slightest carelessness would cause me to be annihilated. I have no choice but to be careful. It was the first time Zhang Yan had heard of the 3 great tribulations. But when he saw Hua Xian seemed to have no intention of speaking deeply about it, he thought in his heart. I'll definitely ask Zhou Chengju when I'm free and see if he knows. Hua Xian's gaze descended once more and glanced at Qin Shi before he stretched his hand into his sleeve and withdrew an item, and he passed it over. This item is called the Cloud Mist Veil, and it's something I used when I broke through my shell all those years ago. I'm the son-in-law of the Chen clan, and my disciples are all disciples of the Chen clan as well, so I don't like them. This treasure is useless to me, so I'll give it to you, junior brother. Zhang Yan smiled lightly and accepted it calmly, and then he cupped his hands and said, then thank you, Senior Brother Hua. He'd never refused a gift that others gave him. As for whether others would misunderstand him accepting Hua Xian's gift, only a useless person would think like that. Presently, he was one of the 10 great disciples, and his status was established. Only others would instead think about how to get on his good side, and they wouldn't fuss about such a small matter. Hua Xian smiled as well, and then he said, Junior Brother Zhang, cultivate well. Presently, I'm the leader of the 10 great disciples, so if there's anything you don't understand in your cultivation, you can come seek guidance from me. Your accomplishments in the future won't be inferior to me. Farewell. He cupped his hands before flashing up, and he transformed into a golden red ray of light that tore through the sky and flew off. Zhang Yan pondered in his heart. Hua Xian coming here today is surely related to me taking over the lower house. But this person's methods are brilliant, and he didn't use a forceful manner and instead spoke warmly and amiably. From the beginning until the end, he didn't persuade me at all. Chen Shi couldn't help but smile. Even if this person didn't come, he wouldn't make any further moves. Currently, he had the position of minister of the lower house because he was one of the 10 great disciples in the sect, and he was able to obtain this position because of his cultivation. Cultivation was the foundation, so he naturally wouldn't put the cart before the horse and lose his original intention. He put his hands behind his back and gazed into the distance. In the next few days, he would have to cultivate painstakingly in order to break through the shell and step into the second level of the core transformation realm as soon as possible. Another 3 days passed. Zhang Yan had sorted out everything, and then he passed the subsequent matters to the 3 of them. Meanwhile, he took the dragon merchant's star cauldron that was buried here all those years ago, and then he left the lower courtyard in a carefree manner. He soared up into the sky and flew towards the southeast towards the Skynet courtyard. This courtyard was one of the 9 courtyards in the sect, and it was a floating province in the Sea of Clouds. The rules here were strict, and other than the 10 great disciples in the sect, only disciples who had made great contributions to the sect could enter. Even so, they had to be accompanied by a master before they could enter. Zhang Yan's sword escape was godly, and it didn't take long before he saw the true appearance of an island in the clouds with clear water and fragrant flowers. There was a mountain on this island, and there was a soil platform that reached the top of the clouds. It was a stargazing tower, and there were 3 9-story pavilions on both sides. They were all built with jade, and the doors were arched. There was no horizontal board on them, and they leaned against the cliff wall. Flowers were planted around them, and the materials of the platform were elegant, and the jade and spring were mixed together, not tainted by impurities. Zhang Yan's sword light disappeared, and he landed in front of the pavilion. He walked up a small gravel path, and the faint sound of zither drifted into his ears. He tilted his head to listen carefully, and only felt that it was profound, and his mind was calm and clear. At the entrance of the mountain, a deacon Taoist waved his horsetail whisk and walked forward. He bowed and said, "Master Zhang, please excuse me for not welcoming you." Zhang Yan's eyes turned, and he bowed slightly. He stepped into the forbidden door, and when he looked up, he saw an uncountable number of cave metals. Among them were bundles of jade scrolls, and they were neatly arranged. They circled the walls, and he couldn't see the end of them. They all emitted a bright light that illuminated the place. There were also 4 arched doors in the east, south, west, and north, which led to other caves. Just as he was about to step forward, he saw a female practitioner in a pink dress standing in the corridor to his left. She had a beautiful silhouette, and she was holding a scroll in her hand, flipping through a book. She seemed to notice someone looking at her, and she looked back. Her eyebrows moved, and she said, "So it's junior brother Zhang. Greetings." Zhang Yan bowed and returned the greeting, and said, "Senior sister Han, greetings." Han Si nodded, and at that moment, a girl ran out, holding a book in her hand. She cheered, "Master, Master, I found it." Han Si frowned, and scolded, "How can you behave like this in front of a master? Hurry up and greet Master Zhang." The girl's eyes widened, and she looked curiously at Zhang Yan. She mimicked an adult and said, "Bishin greets master." Zhang Yan smiled and nodded. Han Si grabbed the girl and held her hand. She said calmly, "Junior brother Zhang, you must be looking for the 5 techniques and 3 scriptures, right? This is not difficult, you can find it in the northern pagoda cave, but if it is another cultivation method, it will be difficult to find. The Taoist books here are as vast as the sea, too many to count. I only found a suitable Taoist book for my disciple, and it took me 3 days. It is quite exhausting, Shidi needs to be patient." Zhang Yan smiled and cupped his hands, "Thank you for the advice, Sister Gu." Han Si didn't say anything more. She bowed, and then left with the girl. Zhang Yan had an idea, and he smiled. He called the deacon Daoist over, and said, "Is there a cultivation method suitable for female cultivators?" The deacon Daoist looked embarrassed, and said, "Reporting to Master Zhang, I'm only here, and I don't really know about the book." Zhang Yan didn't say much, and he just took out a pot of spirit beads from his sleeve and handed it over. The Daoist was surprised at first, and then he beamed with joy. He put away the spirit beads, and his expression became a lot warmer. He bowed, and said, Master Zhang, the school will be in seclusion for a few days, so I'll take care of the chores here. Please wait a moment, I'll go find it for you. Zhang Yan waited for less than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, and the Taoist hurried back. He handed over a jade scroll, nodded, and bowed, and said, Master Zhang, there are 300 cultivation methods suitable for female cultivators in this jade scroll, and they are divided into upper, middle, and lower levels. I've categorized them and added notes. The cultivation method that Master Han and disciple chose is also in there. Chapter 354. Zhang Yan sat in Jingluo Yard for less than half a day, but he had already read through the 5 techniques and 3 scriptures and memorized them in his heart. As for the 12 divine arts, he was not in a hurry to look at them. Divine arts were indeed attractive, but he had not broken through his shell and had no time to study them. He also did not know which divine art was suitable for him. If he looked at it now, it would only mess up his state of mind, and there was no benefit to it. Thus, he decisively left it behind. The cultivation methods in the pagoda cave were not only limited to Taoism Xian techniques, there were also many secret manuals of cultivation methods, and even rare cultivation methods. However, when he took a look, he found that they were incomplete and not much better than the records of travel notes and legends, so he could only shake his head and pass. The Taoist was quite attentive after receiving his benefits. Whenever there was anything that needed to be looked at, he would open the door wide and busy himself. When it was midday, Zhang Yan wanted to leave. Seeing that the Taoist had worked hard, he gave the Taoist a basket of jade beads. The Taoist was overjoyed and personally sent him out. After leaving Jingluo Yard, Zhang Yan rode the wind and broke through the clouds, returning to Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake. Not long after, he returned to the cave dwelling. After a ray of light entered the hall, he looked up and saw a lantern hanging high in front of the hall, and a pearl hanging in the air. He knew that there was a guest. After thinking for a while, he cast a spell to activate the formation and called Shang Shang over. He asked, "Who is it that has come to visit?" Shang Shang bowed and reported, "Master, I heard that Master has obtained the position of the top 10 disciple in the sect. North Star Sect's elder Yen brought his Taoist companion here to congratulate you. Sister Luo Xiao is now in the hall greeting them." Zhang Yan's expression changed slightly. So Elder Yen had arrived. He waved his sleeve and dismissed Shang Shang, then opened the formation door and stepped in. Just now, when he stood still in the main hall, he saw Elder Yen sitting on the banquet table. Beside him were White Sky Demon King Lu Mainyang and her brother Lu Junbai. Not far away from them was Demon King Junyu, Jing Miaojuan. When Elder Yen saw Zhang Yan, he hurriedly stood up to welcome him. He laughed loudly and cupped his fists, saying, "Fellow Taoist Zhang. I haven't seen you in 3 years, and you're even more elegant than before." Zhang Yan walked forward and returned the greeting with a smile, saying, "Elder Yan's cultivation is becoming more and more solid." Seeing Zhang Yan appear, the Lu siblings and Monster King Junyue also came out of their seats and greeted him respectfully. Zhang Yan saw that the 3 of them seemed to be restraining themselves. He thought for a while and understood the reason, so he smiled and extended his hand. He said in a clear voice, "According to our agreement, the 3 of you have come here. You can cultivate in my clear Serenity Cave abode, no restrictions on staying or leaving." When the 3 heard this, they couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Elder Yen also smiled. This was especially so for Lu Mainyang. When Zhang Yan left the outer seas, she was still at the Mystic Light Realm and was only a core disciple of Qinsang School. She could still treat him as an equal, but now, Zhang Yan was one of the top 10 disciples of Qinsang School. He was also at the Transformation Core realm like her, and his status was completely different from before. She was nervous and didn't know if the previous agreement would still be the same. However, Elder Yen was certain. He had sent his grandson to visit Zhang Yan a long time ago. Seeing that there were many beauties in the abode, he knew that Zhang Yan didn't reject Yao cultivators. Although he was one of the top 10 disciples of Qinsang school, he didn't have many disciples. He would need to find help from the outside and take in disciples to strengthen his wings. He wouldn't reject a few transformation core Yao cultivators that came to join him. Monster Monarch Jun Yu stood behind Lu Mainyang and secretly looked at Zhang Yan. After entering this place, her heart wasn't as calm as it looked. Just now, she knew what a profound sect was. This clear serenity heavenly lake was indeed a cave abode. The spirit chi here was many times more abundant than their previous abodes. If they could cultivate here, they would have a high chance of breaking through to the Yuanying realm. Thinking about this, they couldn't help but feel worried. However, Zhang Yan's words calmed them down. Lu Mainyang's face was filled with joy and she said, "Thank you, Estate Lord Zhang." Zhang Yan didn't purposely correct her when she changed the way she addressed him. Before entering the abode, they obviously called each other Taoist. Now that they were in the abode, these three were his guests. Of course, he couldn't be as casual as before. After chatting with them for a while, they sat down and drank a few cups. When the banquet was full, Elder Yen smiled and said, "Today, I have something to give to Taoist. I'm sure you will like it." Zhang Yan put down his cup and smiled, "What is it?" Elder Yen waved his hand and a disciple standing behind him came forward and presented the gift list in his hand. Zhang Yan saw that Elder Yen didn't say it clearly and still wanted to give him the gift list, so he guessed that it must be something valuable. When he took a look, the three words, Peng Lai Chi, came into view. He thought for a while. Although he hadn't heard of this item, it must be extraordinary. That was why he was so serious. Elder Yan's expression became serious. His lips moved and he used a secret voice to explain the function of this treasure. Then, his expression became serious and he cupped his hands together. "This is our sect's secret. I hope Taoist will not tell others." Zhang Yan also stopped smiling and raised his hand to return the greeting. He said seriously, "Rest assured, Elder. Your sect has given such a valuable gift. How can I not know what's good for me? I am ashamed to accept your kindness." Elder Yen nodded and raised his cup. "Come, let me drink to you." He believed that Zhang Yan knew what he was doing. However, this item was too rare. Out of caution, he had to mention it. If it were to circulate in the outside world, Beichin's sect would immediately attract the covetous eyes of the disciples of the big sections. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the sect would be destroyed. After the banquet, Elder Yen said that he had some matters to attend to in the sect and had to return early. He then bid farewell and left. Zhang Yan didn't ask him to stay. He personally saw the elder out of the cave and then returned to settle down the Lu siblings and Monster King Junyue. When the matter was over, he returned to the main residence and ordered the servants to summon Luo Shao. He handed her the jade scroll from Jingluo Yard. He smiled, "Taoist Luo, in this scroll, there are 300 books of mysterious techniques. Taoist Luo can choose one to practice. I will leave this with you. If Taoist Luo wants to take in a disciple, you can also pass on the techniques. Don't worry about anything." Many of these techniques were written by the elders of the Qinsang school, but some were obtained from outside the sect. Among them, there were many techniques that could be practiced to the Yuanying realm. However, the path of cultivation could not be achieved by just relying on techniques. Spiritual houses, magical items, elixirs, and techniques were all indispensable. If one was a rogue cultivator, he would only have one Taoist technique. Without the secret inheritance, it would be impossible to practice to a higher realm. Just like Huang Fuzhou, he obtained an immortal residence. Just now, he had his current cultivation. If he only had techniques, he might not be much better than ordinary disciples. When Zhang Yan mentioned it that day, even though Luo Shao didn't say it out loud, she remembered it in her heart. Now that she saw that he really found a Taoist technique for her, she was overjoyed. Her beautiful eyes turned and she said, "I thank you, Master." Since you already have 4 disciples, I have to take in a few good ones no matter what. I won't let Master monopolize. Zhang Yan nodded and smiled. If Taoist Luo has this intention, it is a good thing. Although I am one of the top 10 disciples, there are still very few disciples under Zhao Yu. I can't compare to other disciples. If Taoist Luo wants to take in disciples, just tell me what you lack. I will not be stingy. When Luo Xiao heard this, she was even more surprised. She thanked him repeatedly. She chatted with Zhang Yan for a while. After that, she lifted the hem of her dress and left happily. After Luo Xiao left, Zhang Yan was about to sit down and meditate. However, he suddenly felt something and said, "Is Yenny here? Why are you wandering outside? Come in and talk." A shadow flashed in front of the cave. Lu Yenny walked in. She took a few steps forward and knelt on the ground, kowtowing heavily. Zhang Yan asked curiously, "Disciple, why are you doing this?" Lu Yenny raised her head and said seriously, "Master, disciple has thought about it for a long time. I want to go out and travel in search of the medicine to transform the pill. I hope Master will allow it." Zhang Yan was slightly stunned and started to ponder. Actually, not to mention that he still had a lot of pills that he had not used. With his current identity, he only needed to say the word and he would be able to find all 3 pills. However, he also knew that disciples of master and disciple went out to search for medicine not only for the pill itself, but also to train their temperament and look for opportunities. Her disciple was not afraid of danger and was not willing to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. It was very rare for her to have such thoughts. After some thought, Zhang Yan felt that now that the competition in the sect was over and there was nothing to do in the house, it should be a period of peace. He also had to cultivate in seclusion, so it was a good time for Lu Yenny to go out and travel. He nodded and said, "I am very pleased that you have such thoughts." Lu Yenny's beautiful eyes were filled with joy and she bowed. "Thank you, Master, for granting my wish." Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, "Since you have left the mountain, if you see the qi of the fire essence and the qi of the metal essence, take some back. However, remember, there is no need to deliberately search for them." Lu Yenny nodded and said, "Disciple will remember." Zhang Yan said again, "The land of Donghua continent is still considered stable, but the demonic calamity is about to happen. It is inevitable that there will be evil spirits stirring up trouble. I will give you a few more treasures to help you defend yourself." He stretched out a finger, and a nimble and fleeting light ray flew out. It spun in mid-air and disappeared into Lu Yenny's sachet. But a moment later, another array flag followed and disappeared into the sachet. That spiritual light was called the boating boat pouch. It was one of the 2 profound level weapons passed down by Guo Zongyao. When fighting with the enemy, it could turn into a bright crystal sand to protect the user. At the crucial moment, it could also hide the body, making it impossible for others to find it. The most amazing thing was that this item could turn into a tent and gather spiritual qi on its own, so it did not hinder cultivation. And that formation flag was the Zhu Yuaning Xing 3 Qi Palace Guard flag, that protected Tian Kun and his mother. Once this formation flag was set up, even the Yuanying cultivators could not do anything to it. Then, Zhang Yan shouted again, "Where is Mountain River Boy?" Following his shout, a child came out and respectfully said, "Master, this lowly one is here." Zhang Yan pointed at Lu Yenny and said, "My disciple wants to go out to look for medicine. You can go with her." Mountain River Boy immediately said in a clear voice, "Yes, I will obey Master's order." Only a true weapon like him did not have a way to injure the enemy or protect it, so it had a good temper. It would do whatever it was told to do, diligently and without any complaints. For a true weapon like that, even if it was to its owner, it would sometimes be cold and indifferent, so why would it take care of a junior? Zhang Yan said gently to Lu Yenny, "Mountain River Boy is very knowledgeable. It will be convenient for you to travel the world with this map." Lu Yenny hurriedly bowed again and said, "Thank you for your gift, Master." Zhang Yan asked gently, "Yenny, when are you leaving?" Lu Yenyi answered, "Disciples' medicine and instruments are all prepared. I wanted to leave after bidding farewell to Master." Zhang Yan smiled and nodded, "Since that is the case, Master will send you off." Then, he rolled up his sleeves and a mist appeared, wrapping Lu Yenyi out of the cave. In an instant, they arrived at the peak of Zhaoyu Mountain. There were white clouds, the sky was blue like a mirror, birds flew across the sky, the pond water was rippling, and fish were jumping on the waves. It was a beautiful scenery. "Master, please stay. I will go now." Lu Yenyi's face was determined. She knelt down and kowtowed 3 times to Zhang Yan respectfully. Then, she stood up and took out a spell. She turned into a clear rainbow, pierced through the clouds and flew into the sky. She embarked on the road to look for medicine alone. Once she left, she probably wouldn't be able to return within 20 to 30 years. Zhang Yan gazed silently at the streak of light that flew into the distance, and he smiled lightly after it vanished before he turned around and returned to the small pot mirror to enter into closed-door cultivation. Chapter 355. Zhang Yan sat on top of the small pot mirror bamboo house. First, he placed a boat full of true sand in front of the house. After sitting silently for a moment, he scooped out the surreal mist yarn that Hu Xian had given him. With a shake of his hand, he cast a spell in the air. A ray of light was released, and the dense qi seemed to carry a thin gauze. It spun around the boat full of true sand, grinding it into dust, turning it into strands of incomparably pure essence qi that floated out. Although he already knew that this item was powerful, he couldn't help but be happy when he saw its effect. With the help of this item, he didn't have to spend too much time refining the true sand every day. The magic treasure that Hu Xian gave him, if it was in the past, would not be of much use. The reason was that a person could only absorb a limited amount of essence qi in a day. After the essence qi entered the body, there was still a need to move the jindan. For example, if you were to absorb a boat full of true sand essence qi, it would take almost a day and a night to transform it into his own. Finally, it would be refined into Dan Fiend. Just like a mortal's daily meal, although they could eat more, there was always a limit. Otherwise, they would only be stuffed to death. But now it was different. The reason was all because of the magic treasure that Qi Yuntian had lent him. This treasure was called the Golden Dust Furnace. After it was ignited, it would emit a mysterious and unusual fragrance. When absorbing the true sand essence qi, if he swallowed it with this strange fragrance, the speed at which he absorbed the essence qi would be several times faster. In other words, he could swallow 2 or even 3 boats of true sand essence qi in a day. Ning Chang's Xian core had reached the 2nd grade, but he was able to break through the shell in less than 20 years. He was relying on the help of this treasure. This item was even more useful to Zhang Yan. If he wanted to break through the shell, there were 2 steps. The first step was to first hone the Dan Fiend in his body to the point where it could not be increased, and the second step was to try to break through this barrier. And his Dan had reached the 1st grade, which meant that the time he needed to accumulate Dan Fiend was much longer than that of other people. With the help of this item, he could save even more time. He thought about it carefully. Apart from these 2 treasures that could help him break through the chakra, he also had the 6 mouthfuls of Penglai Qi that Elder Yen gave him. This item was extremely rare and could actually greatly increase a cultivator's chances of breaking through to the next realm. It would be a waste if he only used it to break through his shell. Therefore, after thinking about it, he decided to put this treasure away and use it in the future. Putting the item into his sleeve, he sat down in a lotus position and looked into his body. Now, as Zhang Yan accumulated more and more pill fiends, he could already see that outside the golden core, there was a layer of clear light that seemed to be circulating. The pearl and jade shone brilliantly. There were 9 openings on this object, and the pill fiend entered and exited from within. This was the aperture membrane. It coexisted with the pill fiend and was formed from the turbid qi expelled from the golden core. The more abundant the pill fiendish qi accumulated, the thicker the membrane shell became. When the pill fiendish chi could no longer increase, it condensed into the thickest barrier, limiting the pill fiendish chi's surging momentum. As a result, when a first-tier core transformation cultivator used their pill fiend, they could not release it in one go. They could only slowly come out from the 9 apertures and use it to fight the enemy. Moreover, as long as half of it came out, it would be blocked by this layer of membrane. It would not come out again. Therefore, whether it was using Fa Li or using supernatural powers, a first-tier core transformation cultivator was far inferior to a second-tier core transformation cultivator. Only by breaking the door and shattering the shell could one enter and exit unhindered. During the sect competition, Fengzhen's cultivation method was called a supernatural power because it could temporarily open the aperture of the shell and release the pill fiend chi at one go, allowing him to use it at will. However, this supernatural power was created by Du De. It was only to confirm a certain idea in his heart and had not been perfected. In the end, it was a trick. The pill fiend was easy to come out but difficult to go back. Every time it was used, not only did it have to be slowly restrained, it would also damage one's essence chi. Therefore, this supernatural power was only suitable to be used when fighting for one's life. After Zhang Yan looked inside for a moment, he gradually gathered his thoughts. Right now was not the time to think about breaking the shell, but to increase the pill fiend chi first. He sat on the couch and first lit up the golden dust furnace. Then, he released the boat full of true sand and took out the blue mist gauze. He then began to slowly refine it. 7 years had passed since he went into seclusion. On this day, he suddenly felt that no matter how much essence chi he absorbed, the pill fiend chi that was originally growing slowly did not increase by even a little. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes and he slowly let out a long breath. He knew that he had reached the peak. However, it was not over yet. He reached into his sleeve and scooped out the origin leaving essence jade. This was what he obtained at the Grade Pill Magic Conference. This item was one of the few treasures in the world that could increase the pill fiend chi. He himself was already a Grade 1 core and had obtained the rare and strong pill fiend chi. If he had the help of this item, he did not know how far he could grow in the end. However, he also had to consider that after refining this item, his shell would become even thicker. However, since this item could increase his strength, why would he give it up just because he was afraid that he would not be able to break through the shell? Thinking about this, he took out the blue mist gauze and ground it against the origin leaving essence jade. However, he found that it did not move at all. Zhang Yan was not surprised. He did not think that this item would be so strong. He thought about it carefully and after a while, he smiled. He raised his hand and swallowed the origin leaving essence jade and placed it into his stomach to refine. He used the pill fiend chi and slowly ground it. He melted the essence jade bit by bit and then refined it into his body, turning it into his own essence chi. This round of grinding took about 100 days. Just now, he had completely refined it. At this moment, he felt as if his body was heavy and floating. With a loud shout, he shook his shoulder, causing the entire small pot mirror to shake. At this moment, the pill evil chi in his abdomen was as vast as the sea and as vast as the clouds. It was many times stronger than before. When he looked at the shell again, he saw that it was like a piece of transparent golden jade. It tightly wrapped the golden core and only traces of pill fiend chi like white smoke were flying around the 9 orifices. At this step, he needed to think about how to break through this barrier. Just as he was deep in thought, he heard the sound of a bell outside. It was long and drawn out, going straight into his ears. He couldn't help but be startled. This meant that someone outside the cave urgently wanted to see him. Just now, this bell would ring. He shouted, "Where is the mirror spirit?" As soon as he finished speaking, a black-robed scholar came out and bowed respectfully. "Master, this lowly one is here." Zhang Yan pointed to the outside and asked, "What happened outside the mansion?" The mirror spirit bowed and said, "Master, it is Fan Changqing who came to the mansion. He seems to have something important to see you." "Oh." Zhang Yan thought in his heart. Since Fan Changqing came here, he should know that I am in retreat. He will never disturb me for such a small thing for no reason. There must be something important to discuss. He changed his mind and decided that he might as well end his cultivation just now so that he could go out for a while. Thinking of this, he shook his sleeves and came out of the small pot mirror. He walked into the array door and came to the hall in an instant. Fan Changqing was walking back and forth in the hall with a frown, as if he had encountered something difficult. Suddenly, he felt movement behind him, and when he turned around to look, he unconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. He cupped his hands and said with an apologetic expression, "Junior brother Zhang, it's my fault for disturbing your closed-door cultivation." Zhang Yan chuckled and returned the greeting. "It's fine. But senior brother seems to be so anxious. May I know what's the matter?" "Hey," Fan Changqing snorted and said, "since Shidi has come out of closed-door training, there is no need to hurry. This matter must be explained clearly to you, otherwise it will be really difficult to make sense of it." Zhang Yan smiled and ordered the maids to serve tea. Then he said, "Come, senior brother, sit down first and tell me slowly." After the two of them took their seats, Fan Changqing tilted his head and suddenly sneered, "Junior brother, do you know that Fang Zhenlu almost had an arm chopped off when he was sparring with someone in a gambling fight?" Zhang Yan was surprised. "What's going on? Who did it?" Fang Zhenlu was one of the top 10 disciples in the sect. Zhang Yan had seen his skills before. Although he was not as good as Du De and Xiao Sha, he was far above normal disciples. Since he gambled with him, his cultivation must not be far. But among the same generation, there were very few who could beat him. Even if they could, they would not be so ruthless because of Lady Chen. Fan Changqing looked at Zhang Yan, sighed, and said, "Speaking of which, this matter is not unrelated to junior brother Zhang." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and asked, "What do you mean?" Fan Changqing said in a low voice, "The person who injured Fang Zhenlu is a disciple of the Shaoqing sect. It is said that he is related to a few of the sect's elders. His name is Ing Minzhang. He came with his senior brother, Cho Kun. He heard that you are one of the top 10 disciples, so he came to visit you. Ing Minzhang heard that you have a first-grade core, so he wanted to compete with you. He wanted to gamble with you, but..." He smiled bitterly. He did not think that junior brother Zhang would be in seclusion. Jin Minzhang could not find an opponent. He probably thought that you are ranked 9th, so he wanted to find junior brother Ning to fight. But junior brother Ning was condensing the true seal, so he left the sect. Maybe he guessed that he was not a match for senior brother Luo and Han Sui, so he went to find Fang Zhenlu. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed. He moved his fingers and said, "Is the Shaoqing sect disciple really that powerful?" Fan Changqing shook his head and said mockingly, "Not really. Ing Minzhang is only 14 years old. He is not a match for Fang Zhenlu in terms of cultivation. He is just relying on a flying sword that was given to him by an elder." But Fang Zhenlu did not know about this. He thought that Ing Minzhang was a naughty child playing around, so he did not take it to heart when they fought. He just wanted to play along. But he did not expect that he would lose face. Zhang Yan shook his head. This matter could only be blamed on Fang Zhenlu's carelessness. He underestimated his opponent, and as a result, many cultivators were defeated. Then he frowned slightly and said in a very strange manner, "Senior brother Fan, since it's the matter between Fang Zhenlu and Jin Minzhang, how did it involve me?" You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.